Golden flames swirled, carrying the aura of a fight to the death, resolve. Jiang Macho looked at Su Zimo, his face no longer showing the immaturity of the past. He was no longer just the avenger of the supreme primal sacred ground. He had become a redeemer. The ancient demon race deserves extermination by all, he said calmly. Su Zimo glanced at him and replied with equal calm. You will die miserably. Life and death don't matter. Eradicating demons is the true righteousness. Jiang Macho retorted. The Lord of Nihility had once shown him a painting, a scene from tens of thousands of years ago, depicting the primordial heartlands. A lost fragment of history. It showed the ancient demon race rampaging across the mortal world, cruelty and savagery everywhere. We are all chosen redeemers, Tangeline said at his side. To destroy demons is our mission. In a sense, they had all been chosen. Without the holy progenitor, Tangeline might still be just an unloved, illegitimate daughter of the Tan clan. Without the Lord of Nihility, Jiang Macho would likely have been crushed to death long ago in his attempt to avenge himself against the supreme primal sacred ground. Su Zimo offered no explanation, no debate. He had no interest in arguing. After all, who bothers to argue with corpses? I'll say only this. Whether the ancient demon race is good or evil isn't something you can define with just a few words. At this, Chu Tianyang of the primal god race smiled lightly, his tone casual. Don't misunderstand me, Holy Sun Tzu. I bear you no grudge, but I too desire this heaven's will. You are too strong, and I have no choice but to join hands with them. The primal god race, if I recall correctly, is one of the supreme races of the outer heavens. Are you of a branch race? Su Zimo asked. He had learned much about the outer heavens. He had even encountered several of its people before. Though he could not claim mastery of its lore, he knew the basics. Both the primal god race and the ancient celestial race were mighty races of the outer heavens. Unlike the primordial heartlands, where humans flourished and the 100 other races could barely lift their heads, in the outer heavens, multiple great races stood shoulder to shoulder in rivalry. Indeed, we are but a branch line, one looked down upon, Chu Tianyang admitted with composure. It wasn't a secret. Otherwise, their line would not have been relegated down to the primordial heartlands. Would you like to see the outer heavens? Su Zimo asked. Why don't you follow me? I'll take you to behold the pinnacle of this world. What is the primal god race? I could let you become its ruler. That does sound tempting, Chu Tianyang laughed. But the heavens will I wish to seize for myself, and the primal god race's rulership I intend to fight for on my own. Su Zimo shook his head with a soft chuckle. I give you the chance, but you'll need the life to seize it. Everyone, let us act in concert. Primordius, the holy son of the supreme primal sacred ground, interjected. From the Magpie Bridge Wonderland, two cultivators shone with intertwining azure and violet light. They wove together a bridge across the void, a galaxy-like span formed by flocks of celestial magpies. Each magpie was filled with celestial vitality, and the very fabric of the void bent to the bridge's influence. This is the celestial bridge of our Magpie Bridge Wonderland, Wang Buhui explained. With this bridge, within its bounds, one can traverse distances in an instant, teleporting anywhere at will. It resembled a formation, but it was far superior. Formations could be destroyed, but this bridge could not, unless its caster was slain. Meanwhile, Chu Tianyang's god blood surged in reverse. Though diluted compared to the true primal god races, it was still formidable. A single drop carried the weight of 10,000 caddies, suffused with divinity, as though an ancient godchild were cleaving the heavens. Divine might poured forth. His eyes glowed brilliantly, hair billowing without wind, his black robe like spilled ink dancing in the air. Kill! He kicked off the void, sonic booms erupting, collapsing swathes of space as he lunged at Su Zimo. God fist of tempered flesh. On his fists, divine light flared. Endless fist intent exploded forth. One punch shook the heavens, another swept the 9 netherworlds. So fierce was the force that every strike was accompanied by the roar of a tornado. Boom! Boom! The fists ripped through the void. Su Zimo met him head-on. His own fists equally fierce, every blow earth-shattering. At the same time, Qing Ruoxue of the ancient celestial race, a woman clad in flowing white robes, joined the fray. She looked like an immortal descending from the clouds. Lips like crimson petals, robes so pure they drew the eye irresistibly. The gate of myriad wonders. Her voice was crisp as she summoned her art. Above her head, the void shifted, spirit force rioted. An ocean of spirit force gathered. She raised her hands overhead and pulled them apart. A heavenly gate unfolded above her, illuminating mountains and rivers. Within it seemed to lie another world, like a mirror image of the primordial heartlands. The myriad forms of life were reflected within. The ancient celestial race, as their name suggested, were said to dwell above the clouds, gazing down upon the mortal world, able to peer into all great shifts and secrets. The heavens will roiled violently. From within the gate poured silver light, cascading down upon Su Zimo. A silver beam struck his abdomen. He did not evade. Though not fatal, it sent a jolt of pain through his body. From within the gate, countless silver rays shot forth. Qing Ruoxue maintained her distance, relying on long-range attacks. With the celestial bridge's aid, she could teleport freely, making her all but untouchable. And then came Xiao Mo of the God Demon Well. Clad in a black gold robe with a matching cloak, he pressed his pale hands to the ground, veins bulging on his forehead. Slowly, he raised his arms, and from the earth of the island there appeared a well, the God Demon Well. A well of spring and autumn, a grave of gods and demons. That was the origin of both the artifact and the sect that bore its name. You of the God Demon Well are generous indeed, Su Zimo remarked. To bring out your sect's supreme treasure here, are you not afraid that, should you fall, it will never see the light of day again? That is no concern of yours, Xiao Mo replied coolly. Ancient, withered black miasma billowed from the well. Ghastly faces writhed around its edge, while nearly forgotten runes crawled over its surface. Horrific screams echoed from within. With a wave of Xiao Mo's hand, several towering god-fiends strode forth. Each one massive, each one comparable to Su Zimo in strength, their bodies wrapped in black chains. Ferocious and savage, their aura was suffocating. Kill him, and I will grant you freedom, Xiao Mo said. Deal, came their deep, cavernous reply. The god-fiends thundered forward, charging at Su Zimo. Now he was forced to evade the silver beams from the heavenly gate above while fending off Chu Tianyong and these god-fiends simultaneously. On the sidelines, Jiang Macho and Tan Jilin exchanged a glance. The Scarlet Flame Imperial Physique and the Army Breaker Imperial Physique activated at the same time, flanking from left and right, surrounding Su Zimo. For a moment, thunder rolled across the heavens, and earth fire burned fiercely. Several peerless god-fiends roared, like savage beasts from the primordial ages, carrying a desolate and ancient aura as they charged without fear of death. Explosions rumbled, and fragments of collapsing void flashed before everyone's eyes. Su Zimo responded with ease, dodging as he fought. These people's strength was among the top tier. With the help of the celestial bridge, they could traverse the void without limit. Su Zimo roared, planting his feet firmly, his gaze sharp as it swept in all directions. His aura surged wave after wave higher and higher. In addition to the God-Demon creation Atlas strengthening his soul and the Heaven-Earth Dharma Codex reinforcing his flesh, he also activated the 9 transformations of the War God and the Hell-suppressing Demon Physique. Paired with the heaven-shattering God Scripture, at this moment he was like the supreme sovereign of creation itself, immeasurably towering. The rise and fall of the great Tao of the world, only I stand above. He raised his right hand high, the codex of life and death hovering in the void, spilling out life and death energy that flooded the space around them. Chains of life and death spread outward, binding toward everyone nearby. Even with the celestial bridge allowing limitless movement, it was useless. The chains seemed to have a tracking ability, relentlessly coiling toward them. Chu Tianyong's god fist came once again, but Su Zimo snorted coldly. Does a firefly dare to compete with the brilliance of the full moon? He ignored the others, bringing down Shadow Tyrant like a mountain range stacked upon itself, shattering all void, carrying the roar of thunder and storm as he slashed forward. The three life gates circled around him. The war god armor covered his body, and his domineering aura soared into the heavens. In this era, how can you even hope to contend with me? One slash fell, and Chu Tianyong's fist was forcibly severed. Shadow Tyrant was like a bloodthirsty beast, devouring it whole. Chu Tianyong's figure was blasted away, crashing into the peak of a strange mountain. With a thunderous crack, the peak shattered, dust scattering everywhere. Save me! Blood gushed from his mouth in torrents, his chest caving inward. Chu Tianyong shouted desperately. Who can save you? Su Zimo said lightly. I gave you a chance, but you failed to cherish it. Pathetic. Stop him! Jiang Macho shouted angrily nearby. If one person died, their collective strength would drop, so no one dared slack off. The scarlet flame imperial physique burned furiously, its flames incinerating all things, able to burn through the 9 heavens and 8 wastelands. One of the fiercest flames in existence. The raging flames transformed into a fiery meteor, descending from above to strike Su Zimo. Out of my way! Su Zimo roared like thunder, his voice exploding across the void. Jiang Macho's body was blasted away in an instant. Su Zimo stepped forward, exuding overwhelming might, thunder and storm trembling around him. He landed a step beside Chu Tianyong, gazing down at him like an insect, as though pinching an ant between his fingers. A massive hand grabbed Chu Tianyong and lifted him into the air. No! Chu Tianyong struggled frantically, veins bulging on his face as god blood burned within him. But in sheer strength he was far too lacking. Su Zimo glanced at Xiao Mo by the god demon well, who still seemed to be summoning something. Then he hurled Chu Tianyong's body with brutal force. With a thunderous impact, flesh and blood exploded as the body smashed onto the god demon well. The well shuddered violently. With just that one strike, Chu Tianyong's soul was annihilated, his spirit dispersed forever. A rabble? And you think yourselves worthy? Su Zimo sneered disdainfully. Above, the Codex of Life and Death had already bound the two of the Magpie Bridge Wonderland. Though they dodged constantly, they could not fully escape. Su Zimo shot into the sky, charging toward the bridge of immortal magpies. Stop him! Jiang Macho roared again. Tangeline rushed in first, appearing above Su Zimo's head. Her might was immense, her giant axe heavy with the power of breaking the cauldron and sinking the boat, cleaving down mercilessly. Steel met blade with a thunderous crash, shockwaves rippling through the void, annihilating everything in their path. The others scrambled aside to avoid the fallout. Though Tangeline was knocked flying, Su Zimo's advance was stalled. Innate 5 primes, the origin and the breath. At that moment, Primordius's shout rang from afar. His figure transformed into a wisp of pure essence. A formless chaotic aura descended from above, surrounding Su Zimo. Primordius, together with Supreme Unity, Supreme Beginning, Supreme Simplicity, and Yin Yang were the 5 innate primes. They represented the 5 stages the cosmos must pass through to transition into the world. Only by experiencing these 5 stages could a true world be born. My Primordius can return all things to their origin, pushing him from the beginning of all things back into the unbeginning, Primordius declared. Assist me, I need time. As he spoke, he chanted continuously, his expression solemn, his gaze profound. From the Primordius there was non-being. Non-being had no name. From the one arose being, yet being had not yet taken form. Primordius, the root of the Tao, the first manifestation of energy. Yin Yang, before heaven and earth divided, when primal energy was unified, this was Primordius, this was supreme unity. I have the army breaker imperial physique. I can barely hold him back, but not for long, Tangeline said. By now, her figure had unknowingly grown enormous, like a colossal axe piercing into the heavens, cutting through all obstacles, able to sever everything in the world. The resolve of breaking the cauldron and burning the boats filled the air as she charged with the giant axe toward Suzimo. At the same time, Jiang Macho's flames roared higher and higher, so fierce they seemed to consume his entire being. The void around him was completely incinerated. A divine dragon of crimson fire coiled around him. "Celestial Gate Seal!" the celestial woman Qing Ruoxue cried. Her white robes fluttered, long hair flowing. From the celestial gate, beams of silver light descended onto Suzimo, then spread quickly and powerfully. They transformed into multiple celestial gates, trapping Suzimo inside. "A dying struggle," Suzimo said coldly. He stepped forward, shattering all the celestial gates instantly. They could not hold him at all. He ignored the others. With a pull, he dragged down the chains of the Codex of Life and Death. On the other end, the two of the Majipi Bridge Wonderland, Wang Buhui and White Lotus Fairy, turned pale with terror. "You two can die first," Suzimo said, throwing two crushing punches. Their bodies were blasted straight into the Codex of Life and Death. The book devoured their life force endlessly. Meanwhile, the fire dragon and Tangeline's axe attack struck together. The group entangled Suzimo while above, Primordius's aura grew heavier and heavier. The heavens themselves filled with the aura of Primordius. After a long while, Primordius suddenly opened his eyes wide. At this moment, under the vast sky, a dim wind began to blow. The wind was like the darkness of heaven and earth, sweeping in from every direction. Primordius traces back to the origin. Within the dim wind, the entire sky seemed to darken, sand and stones flying, the sun obscured. A ray of light enveloped Suzimo. "Revert," Primordius uttered softly. The void began to ripple, as if time and space were rewinding, chaos overlapping with order. Centered on Suzimo, that patch of void completely collapsed. This is a unique ability of Primordius physique. It can revert someone back to their place of origin. Primordius looked at Suzimo and said, "No matter what kind of existence you are, you did not appear out of thin air. There must always be an origin." "Is that so?" Suzimo smiled. "Do you know why I didn't stop you?" "Why?" Primordius frowned and asked. "Because I also want to know my own origin," Suzimo replied. He had always thought that as the Infernal Lord, he should be of the ancient demon race. But later, through conversations with Paimon and Sevenface, he learned that his past life was not of the demons at all. He had suddenly appeared among them, leading them to defy their fate. As for his true background, even the infernal archons did not know. So he too wanted to know his own identity, or where each generation of infernal lords came from, why they could not be killed, endlessly reincarnating. As the power of Primordius enveloped his body, Suzimo felt the changes within himself. Shaking his head in slight disappointment, he said, "If you could gather all 5 and 8 primes, then perhaps it would be interesting. But with only Primordius, it seems rather useless." He stood motionless, completely unaffected by the force of Primordius. No matter how time and space rewound and reversed, he remained unmoved. "You people only have these little tricks left. Then let's end this quickly," Suzimo said calmly. "As long as we are here, we will not let you bear the heaven's will," Tangeline said. "You?" Suzimo laughed. "Would you mind repeating that?" As his words fell, a powerful aura burst forth from his body, his true fate unleashed. In the mist, a gigantic blue planet slowly rose into the air. The planet carried a dreamlike beauty, blue, illusory, as if it did not belong to this world. The moment it appeared, it seemed to be an absolute contrast to this world. The surrounding void collapsed, unable to withstand its immense power. This overwhelming might directly suppressed everything around, as it slowly rotated on its own. The power of the Grand Tao filled the surroundings, the sounds of the Tao echoing faintly, resonating within the hearts of all. Everyone stared blankly at the blue planet. They felt only great terror. In fact, calling it great terror was not enough. To say a mayfly trying to shake a tree or a mantis trying to stop a chariot would still be insufficient. They felt utterly insignificant. Before this planet, they felt as though they were mere ants. Vast, immense, boundless. There was no way to describe the planet. Is this a particle world? Jiang Macho muttered to himself. When have we ever seen such a particle world? Xiao Mo swallowed hard and replied. Is this that guy's true fate? Why do I feel I don't even have the courage to resist? The blue planet surged, crushing everything around. Su Zimo's aura grew stronger and stronger as his eyes swept across the surroundings. Everyone trembled violently, feeling a fear that froze their very souls. From their feet to their foreheads, terror surged through them. They were all suppressed in place, unable to move, as if that slowly rotating blue planet carried some kind of bewitching force. Perhaps only death will make you understand just how foolish your so-called resistance really is. His words fell, like the decree of heaven that had already pronounced everyone's death sentence. No! Xiao Mo roared, trying to run to the side. But it was already too late, he could barely even move a step. The blue planet above magnified, and then with a thunderous boom it fell. As it descended, everything perished. Whether it was Tangeline, Jiang Macho, Ing Ruoxue, or Xiao Mo, they all turned to nothingness. Not a trace of struggle remained. In everyone's eyes, the last scene was frozen on Su Zimo, that figure exuding boundless might, towering incomparably. Outside, discussions raged. This scene shocked everyone. But at this moment, Su Zimo paid attention to nothing else. He only looked upward, at the heavens while hanging above the sky. After everyone had perished, a beam of light appeared where he stood. That light enveloped him, and the resplendent heavens were transformed into a rainbow, wandering through the void. Su Zimo stepped into the air, his purple robe fluttering sharply in the wind. Shadow Tyrant rested in its sheath upon his back, his eyes calm. In this life, I am the Infernal Emperor, destined to rule all, Su Zimo declared. Who rules rise and fall? Only I decide. His voice was not loud, yet it spread from the Skytrap Island, across the endless sky sea, throughout the entire primordial heartlands. It echoed in the ears of all. People looked up and saw the heaven's will in the sky winding around him. The powers of countless Daos flowed. 5 elements: wind, rain, thunder, lightning. The heavens seemed to have opened a rift. In past years, when grand emperors bore the heaven's will, they would carry it upon themselves, stepping into their chosen grand Dao. But Su Zimo did not use his body to gather the heaven's will. Instead, he placed the blue planet of the God world before him. The flowing heavens will directly surged into the God world. Amid countless grand Dao intertwining, Su Zimo's soul returned into the God world. This was the moment the God world was reborn. In the past, limited by Su Zimo himself, the strongest cultivators of the God world could only reach the God Meridian realm, struggling to progress further. But now, with the fusion of the heaven's will, it meant the God world could take another step forward. From a lower-ranked world, it would begin evolving into a middle-ranked world. The entire God world shook, the sky displaying countless nomological truths. At this moment, everyone within the God world could see this scene. What's happening? A celestial phenomenon. Has some treasure appeared? It seems there's Dao resonance within. This is no simple matter. Others who bore the heavens will become grand emperors and comprehended a higher nomological truth. But they could only grasp one nomological truth. Immortals generally understood simple nomological truths such as the 5 elements, or wind, rain, thunder, lightning. Bearers of the heavens will could comprehend higher ones. For example, time, destiny, destruction, or order. But Su Zimo was different from all of them, for his true fate was an actual world. Thus, he could wield all nomological truths. Whether minor or major, countless grand Daos surrounded him. His gaze swept across the surroundings. The vast heaven's will was condensed above the skies of the God world. The entire God world also underwent earth-shaking changes. Within his body, the ninth meridian gate emitted booming sounds. At this moment, countless nomological truths, under the convergence of spirit force like a waterfall, rushed toward the meridian gate. With a loud bang, a muffled sound resounded within his body, like the beating of a war drum. The God world and he were one and the same. As he impacted the ninth meridian gate, the God world was also undergoing its own metamorphosis. Su Zimo's soul wandered through the void, his expression solemn, surrounded by endless grand das. Around him, strange phenomena appeared endlessly, golden lotuses rising from the earth, sweet dew descending from the heavens, seeds of the Tao falling down, the sound of the Tao echoing wearily. The pounding sounds within his body continued to resound. The ninth meridian gate was as solid as a rock, like a great dam, as torrential waves of spirit force ceaselessly crashed against it. Su Zimo did not hesitate in the slightest. Breaking through the meridian gate must be done in one attempt, otherwise hidden injuries would remain, and the next impact would be even harder. He drew upon the life energy of the Tree of Life. Any injuries were instantly healed. Finally, perhaps after several hours, days, or even months, years, in the infinite void, there was no concept of time. He did not bother to care. A cracking sound came from within his body, like glass forming fractures. Su Zimo suddenly opened his eyes, and in that instant, the silent void instantly froze. It was as if when he opened his eyes, he traversed billions of miles, encompassing mountains, rivers, and vast lands, crossing from one corner of the void to traverse countless perilous worlds. Treasures, strange people, bizarre events, the splendor of all worlds, all captured within his gaze. With just one glance, it was as if an eternity passed, as if he had seen through all of creation. When spring arrives, if I do not open my mouth, which cicada dares to make a sound? The ninth meridian gate, Voidrend, was finally broken through. The 12 meridian gates are Springwheel, Deep Bone, Dawn Wind, Vast Sea, Bloodveil, Duskpine, Void Verge, Shadowbearer, Voidrend, Prime Circle, Lightbringer, and Voidcleave. One meridian gate is a minor cycle, and every 3 meridian gates form a major cycle. Each breakthrough brings a surge of strength. At this moment, Su Zimo's 9 meridian gates within his body reflected one another, like marks of stars in the sky, extremely dazzling. The overwhelming, ocean-like spirit force surged through the meridians and meridian gates within his body. Between each meridian gate, countless meridians were connected. Without opening the meridian gates, spirit force could not flow through these meridians. In a sense, the meridian gates were more like doorways, bearing the role of connecting meridians. Although Su Zimo's figure was only 1.87 meters, within that body was a power that gave one a profound sense of enormity, like a small boat atop a roaring ocean. Yet this small boat was not struggling upon the waves, but instead encompassed the entire sea. The ocean existed within the boat. Withdrawing his gaze from the void, Su Zimo slowly closed his eyes, sensing the strength within his body. Endless power, unceasing. A Grand Emperor was one who enters the path of Tao and was acknowledged by the Grand Tao itself. They did not need to undergo tribulation. He slowly extended his hand, various nomological truths entwining his fingers and palm. At times, it was the power of the 5 elements. At times, thunder surged. At times, heavens will bestowed the future. At times, destruction shattered the void. At times, order established a new world. Space-time twisted, darkness descended, light returned. Whereas ordinary people could only wield one nomological truth, in him, there was nothing he could not use. Any nomological truth could be freely wielded, because Su Zimo's greatest difference from others was the path he cultivated. Ordinary people cultivated themselves, with heaven's will condensed within their bodies. But Su Zimo cultivated the world, and all his power came from the God world. The God world, being a complete world, contained every nomological truth, and he could use them all at will. Now the God world had also advanced further. The first heaven's will of the God world began to condense in the void. After an era, the first heaven's will would emerge. At that time, all chosen ones could fight for it. All living beings of the God world looked at heaven's will. Though they did not know what it was, they faintly sensed its extraordinary nature. This matter needed to be guided gradually, step by step. They must come to believe it was heaven's and the Tao's gift, not something controlled behind the scenes. Now Su Zimo wore a purple robe, his aura withdrawn. If he did not unleash his full strength, he appeared no different from an ordinary person, impenetrable to any gaze. The ability to conceal and release all his power at will, without leaking even a trace, showed his mastery of it. He descended from the air, arriving at the myriad beast realm. Even without intentional action, anyone glanced at by his gaze faintly felt oppression. The primordial chaos bead still hung in the void, the insect egg within nearly invisible. Su Zimo finally saw clearly the creature inside. It was an insect with a body like white jade. Though small, less than 50 centimeters long, its body structure was extremely complex. Its body was covered with countless barbed spikes, its 4 limbs muscles bulging prominently. Its claws were like those of a mantis, extremely sharp. On its head grew 2 horns. Its face bore no features, only countless evenly sized eyes. Each eye shone with a different color. This insect did not crawl but walked upright, with a pair of wings thin as cicada's wings on its back. "Quite a delicate little thing," Su Zimo said with a smile. "Boy, what exactly is that thing?" the monster asked in a deep voice, staring at the primordial chaos bead above. "Even if you are a grand emperor, my insect egg cannot be shattered. How could it dissolve so easily?" Its identity was extraordinary, having witnessed countless great storms and trials. Yet it had never lost composure like this before. Not even when seeing a grand emperor appear before it had it been so horrified. "That is not something you should be concerned with," Su Zimo replied. "Have you thought about your own fate? You dare kill me?" the strange insect asked, staring at Su Zimo. Su Zimo did not answer, but with a wave of his right hand, boundless imperial might condensed in his palm. The meaning was clear without words. "You likely still do not know my origins," the strange insect said. "I am of the primordial god frontier. Our race dwells in the vast boundless cosmos. We devour worlds as food, the strongest race of this universe. Your human race, before us, is not even worthy as food." Its tone was calm, without a trace of arrogance or boastfulness, as though merely stating a simple fact. "You have captured me now, but once you go to the outer heavens, you will be hunted by my race. By then, only I can protect you," the strange insect continued. "You carry my scent on you, and they will follow the trail all the way. Even a grand emperor will be powerless. Do you dare kill me? Primordial god frontier? Why have I never heard of it?" Su Zimo asked. "How could that be something you could touch? Just a frog at the bottom of a well in a minor world," the insect said faintly. As soon as its voice fell, it let out a miserable cry. Su Zimo's foot had come down, stomping heavily on its head, pressing it deep into the ground. Dust flew into the air. "If you're so powerful, how did you become my prisoner?" Su Zimo said. "If it weren't for the schemes of the heavenly Tao of the primordial heartlands, even 10 grand emperors would be useless. Do you really think you defeated me?" The insect still asked unwillingly. "What do you mean?" Su Zimo asked. "In the past, when our race from the primordial god frontier invaded the primordial heartlands, we underestimated its heavenly Tao, and we were heavily injured by its schemes. In the end, led by that so-called Fei Yu, we were exterminated. Out of hundreds of our cosmic insect race, I alone survived," the insect said with resentment. "I was on the verge of death, forced into hiding. For thousands of years I nursed my wounds, waiting for a comeback. Now that I was close to regaining my power, I didn't expect the heavenly Tao had long been watching me. It let you contestants of heavens will arrive at the Skytrap Island, reducing all my efforts to nothing. I hate it. Just one step, only one more step, and I could have recovered, broken the seal of the primordial heartlands, and return to our primordial god frontier. Then, with the arrival of the army, everything would be destroyed. Then you're rather pitiful, Suzimo replied. Boy, you carry my scent. Unless you never ascend, once you reach the outer heavens, my kind will sense it, the insect said. It brings you no benefit, only the threat of death. Why not let me go? I can let bygones be bygones. Let you go. Suzimo shook his head with a laugh. I don't think so. Perhaps this is a good thing. What do you mean? The insect asked. Your identity must not be ordinary, Suzimo said. Let me give you an example. Our true martial sacred ground is the #1 imperial lineage in the eastern continent. But even so, if an ordinary disciple disappears, few will notice. Only if someone of my level, a holy son, goes missing would the lineage move heaven and earth to find him. Your primordial god frontier must be the same. If no one comes looking, it means your identity is low, and I need not worry. But if someone comes after me, it proves you are extraordinary, and your life is in my hands. Tell me, what would they be willing to pay to exchange for you? All right, does your race have any treasures? Tell me, so I can see if your life is worth anything. Hearing Suzimo's words, the insect cursed angrily. Human, you are shameless. The primordial god frontier will never be threatened. Then we'll wait and see. For now, just stay here. Even if you want to die, you can't, Suzimo said. After that, he ignored the insect. Paimon and the others came over from afar. Congratulations, my lord. Everyone congratulated. Heavens will has chosen you. My lord has finally taken the first step. Yes, but this is only the first step. The realm of Grand Emperor is both an end and a beginning, Suzimo sighed. After I rest for 100 years, I will set out for the outer heavens, to battle in that greater world. Suzimo pointed to the insect and said, Keep a close watch on it. Its identity is unusual. Don't let it play tricks. After giving Paimon and the others a few instructions, Suzimo returned to the primordial heartlands. At this moment, the images carried by heavens will also vanished from the void, and no one knew the situation inside Skytrap Island. Only the words, I am the Infernal Emperor, and I shall dominate all things, echoed through the void, spreading across the primordial heartlands, falling into everyone's ears and hearts. Infernal Emperor, someone murmured. So, this is his imperial title for this era. Many great imperial lineages sighed. In the end, we still lost. Before absolute power, all conspiracies and alliances are nothing but illusions, like flowers in the mirror or the moon in water, meaningless and unreal. In past generations, grand emperors always fought their way to the top. But when have we ever seen such a direct sweep? Yes, when has there ever been a time when all prodigies fought against just one person? This generation's geniuses are all finished. I fear the primordial heartlands will now enter a barren period. The so-called barren period was when there was a gap in the rise of geniuses. With all the strong ones fallen, those left were just monkeys crowned kings in the absence of tigers. What does it matter? The Grand Emperor will remain on the primordial heartlands for 100 years. This century belongs to him. After 100 years, when he ascends, the geniuses will have recovered, and then prosperity will return. Those nearby explained. For those who had seen the struggle for heaven's will before, it was acceptable. But for many witnessing it for the first time, they were filled with awe. This generation's battle for heaven's will had ended, and the Infernal Emperor inherited the era left behind by the previous mortal emperor. From this moment, he was the master of the primordial heartlands. Oh! A lone small boat floated slowly in the boundless sea, drifting eastward toward the eastern continent. This boat seemed to carry a special meaning. No matter how the waves surged, it remained unmoved. In the vast sea, it traveled steadily, calming the waves around it, exuding peace. In the distance, the God Emperor stood upon a reef, gazing at the approaching boat. Congratulations, he said with a smile. In that moment, the God Emperor was also deeply moved. Fate truly was a strange thing. Suzimo leaned against the corner of the boat, slowly opening his eyes and yawning. "Why are you here?" "To talk, and also for some matters," the God Emperor replied. He followed beside the boat, stepping on the water's surface without causing a single ripple. Everything was tranquil. "What matters?" Su Zimo asked. "The ruins of divinity will soon open. You'll be going, won't you?" the God Emperor asked. The ruins of divinity. Su Zimo thought for a moment. It seemed that long ago he had an agreement with a clan called Fan, who promised to leave him a spot. But with his current status, he no longer needed that quota. If he wanted to go, who would dare stop him? However, since so much time had passed, if the God Emperor hadn't mentioned it, he might have almost forgotten. "I'll go take a look," Su Zimo nodded. "What is it?" he asked. "How much do you know about the ruins of divinity?" the God Emperor asked. "I haven't had the chance to learn about it yet," Su Zimo replied. It was said that the ruins of divinity were the final place where the gods vanished during the legendary era. In that age where gods filled the land, divinities ruled the world. Until one day, the war god waged a battle against the other gods for unknown reasons. After that battle came the gods' fall, and from then on, no god remained in the world. Even all traces and legends about them disappeared without a shadow. Only the existence of the ruins of divinity, as the last place, symbolized the glory of that era. But the conditions to enter the ruins were harsh. Even the Grand Emperors could not bypass them. They only opened once every 100 years. In the past, the ruins had always been occupied exclusively by the Middle Continent's forces, not allowing outsiders to intrude. But given Su Zimo and the God Emperor's status now, no one would dare to stop them. That was all Su Zimo knew about the ruins. As for what lay inside, he had no idea. "I came to find you because I want us to explore it together," the God Emperor said. "I went once before, but there were places even I felt were dangerous and didn't dare force my way through. This time, with you there, we can look out for each other." "All right," Su Zimo nodded. "When the ruins open, come to the true martial sacred ground." The God Emperor nodded slightly, then asked, "What are your plans for now?" "Nothing much, just stabilizing my realm and probing toward the next level," Su Zimo replied. The realms beyond Grand Emperor were no longer the same as the lower ones. The Grand Emperor realm was divided into 5 substages. They were Yin-Yang stage, Void Turbulent stage, God Unity stage, Life-Death stage, and finally the Sovereign Lord stage. The gap between these stages was like an unbridgeable chasm. What Su Zimo had just accomplished, bearing the heaven's will, was only stepping into the Grand Emperor realm. He had not even reached the first stage, Yin-Yang. 100 years would be enough for him to reach Yin-Yang, and then ascend to the outer heavens. At such a level, advancement depended entirely on comprehension, on enlightenment. Some could awaken in one night, break through, and step forward. Others would spend their entire lives with no progress until death, living in regret. After exchanging a few words, the two parted ways. The small boat sailed smoothly. Su Zimo was still adapting to the power within his body. After bearing the heaven's will and entering the Grand Emperor realm, his strength had skyrocketed. He needed time to adjust. Before, his body was like a stormy sea, power surging violently. Occasional muffled booms echoed from within him. Now that power was gradually calming, like a gentle stream flowing quietly through him. If one looked closely, one could see his blood slowly turning golden. His eyes carried more and more pressure. In fact, in Su Zimo's eyes, even his vision of the world seemed different. He could see the floating essences of countless attributes around him. The movement of the air, every subtle detail of existence. It felt as though the higher he went, the more he could see through the essence of the world. Above the nomological truths were the primal Daos. Above the primal Daos were the primordial edicts. Beyond that, what was there? Su Zimo did not know. He would have to wait until he reached the outer heavens to find out. After bearing the heaven's will, he did not make a big spectacle. Even though the whole primordial heartlands now buzzed with the news that the new Grand Emperor, titled Infernal Emperor, was none other than the true martial sacred ground's current holy son. Su Zimo returned to the eastern continent. With a wave of his right hand, the void before him split open, forming a void gate. His figure stepped through, and minutes later he appeared at the gates of the true martial sacred ground. The purple robe was long gone, replaced by a white robe. The robe was embroidered on the back with golden waves, and its sleeves and collar were carefully tailored. At this time, the spring breeze was mild, the sunlight warm. Su Zimo walked through the Sex Mountain Gate. The two disciples guarding the gate hurriedly greeted. "Greetings, infernal emperor." Su Zimo smiled and waved. Watching him walk away, the two stared blankly for a long while. A grand emperor alive. In my lifetime, I've actually seen a living grand emperor. Yes, with our true martial sacred ground now holding 5 emperors, we will surely become the strongest force in the primordial heartlands. Even the immortal extinction sacred ground was defeated by the Holy Sun. Who else would dare oppose us? Su Zimo first went to Green Mountain to see his parents. No matter how vast the world, family came first. Wanren Yun and Su Qingshan seemed to have been waiting for him. Su Qingshan patted his shoulder, looked him up and down, and laughed. "Good, you're back. Let me see. Are you hurt anywhere?" Wanren Yun asked with concern. She had seen during the Heavens Will battle how everyone had besieged Su Zimo. Su Zimo smiled and shook his head. He chatted briefly with his parents, but felt they seemed to be holding something back, as though they had words left unsaid. "Dad, Mon, what's wrong?" Su Zimo asked directly. "If there's something, just say it. In this world, there's nothing I can't handle." "Since you asked, then I'll speak plainly," Wanren Yun replied. "Your path of cultivation, your choices, we have never stopped you. We've always let you decide. But now you've reached the Grand Emperor realm, standing atop the world. I know it won't be long before you will have to leave this world. All this way, it's been nothing but cultivation. Have you never thought of anything else?" "What else?" Su Zimo asked, confused. He truly didn't understand. Other than cultivation, what else was there? "Your marriage, of course. They say among the unfilial, having no descendants is the grandest sin," Wanren Yun quickly said. "You've never thought about this?" Su Zimo almost wanted to reply, "Women only slow me down when drawing my sword." But after some thought, he didn't say it. "Mother, this isn't urgent," Su Zimo said instead. "How is it not urgent? I tell you, before you ascend, leave us a grandchild," Wanren Yun said. "Otherwise, your father and I will always feel empty inside." Seeing her anxious expression, Su Zimo fell silent. Parents everywhere, most of their thoughts are always on their children, hoping they grow up, start a family, and carry on the line. He was their only son. If he left, whether they would ever meet again was uncertain. "I'll think about it," Su Zimo finally said. Wanren Yun was about to continue, but Su Qingshan stopped her. "Let him think about it. Don't push him too hard." Then Su Qingshan said, "Go visit the ancestors. They're likely eager to see you too." Su Zimo nodded slightly. After bidding farewell to Su Qingshan and Wanren Yun, he left Green Mountain and went straight toward the line of sky at the back of the true martial sacred ground. No one blocked his way. In today's world, there was no place he could not go. Passing by the abyss of life and death, he arrived at this vast land that looked like a boundless forest. Su Zimo looked into the distance, took one step, and already appeared on the cliff top. The 3 old ancestors sat there, quietly waiting for him. Seeing Su Zimo approach, the Sky Shroud War God stood up first and bowed to him. "Why is Ancestor doing this?" Su Zimo smiled. "The one who attains the throne of Grand Emperor naturally commands reverence. Whoever sees him must bow. It has nothing to do with age or seniority." Su Zimo did not argue, only chuckled softly. "Now that you have achieved the Grand Emperor realm, our true martial sacred ground's prestige is at its peak," said the traveler. "In your era, the sect can grow like wild grass and trees, thriving freely. No one and no power dares to contend with us." "I understand," Su Zimo nodded. "I came here to ask, how much do the honored ancestors know about the ruins of divinity?" Hearing his words, the three exchanged glances. The Sky Shroud War God said, "When we were young, we also entered once. Rather than calling it ruins, it would be more accurate to say it is the necropolis of the gods." Necropolis. Su Zimo was surprised. Have all the gods died? The fall of the legendary era and the disappearance of the gods were closely linked. Most people believed the gods had simply vanished. No one ever considered that gods could actually fall. Who could have the power to end the lives of gods? Whether all the gods fell, we do not know. But inside is indeed the tomb, or you could say the cemetery of gods, replied the Sky Shroud War God. Inside lies both great fortune and great danger. Many ancestors at the Zenith Immortal Realm died there. Yet some young heroes with good fortune gained opportunities inside and eventually bore the heaven's will. You want to go see it? Asked the traveler. Of course I will, Su Zimo nodded. Be cautious. Even Grand Emperor Jinwu could not see through it in the past, said the Sky Shroud War God. Su Zimo nodded. In the days to come, I will enter seclusion for a time, to stabilize my Tao heart, and prepare for my eventual ascent to the outer heavens. The three old ancestors all nodded. The time a grand emperor could stay in the primordial heartlands was limited. The heavenly Tao would not allow an invincible being to exist here for too long. Such a presence would disrupt the world's order and hinder its growth. The Sky Shroud War God then reached into the void and took out two objects. One was a book, the other a token. He handed both to Su Zimo, saying, "This is the true martial token." Before Grand Emperor Jinwu ascended, he once said that the glory of the true martial sacred ground must shine even in the outer heavens. In the desolate era, he ended the rule of the beasts, founded the true martial sacred ground, and opened the imperial era. I suspect that even when he reached the outer heavens, he would have established the true martial sacred ground there as well. Yet the outer heavens and the primordial heartlands are worlds apart. Even as a grand emperor, one is only considered middle strength there. Countless years have passed, and I do not know how he fares above. Every generation of emperors in our sect, I give them one token. Take it with you to the outer heavens, and seek out Jinwu or the true martial sacred ground if you can. First, to see whether our forebears of the true martial sacred ground still live well there. Second, once you arrive in the higher realm, alone and without support, perhaps this will give you a place of shelter. Su Zimo solemnly received the token. He did not seek protection, but he sincerely admired the greatness of Jinwu. These ancestors never ceased their steps, always desiring to make the name of the true martial sacred ground shine in the outer heavens. As for himself, he had no attachments. After bidding farewell to his parents, there would be little left for him to care about. He then accepted the book. It was not written on paper but carved onto bamboo slips. It looked extremely ancient. This was left behind by Jinwu before he ascended. It contains his insights and experiences on the realm of the Grand Emperor. You may read it. Perhaps it will help you, explained the Sky Shroud War God. Thank you, Su Zimo said with a nod. The Sky Shroud War God waved his hand, sighing. The only pity is, you grew too fast. Is growing fast a bad thing? Su Zimo smiled. It is not that it's bad. But every grand emperor through history had his war generals. You, however, alone you crushed all the prodigies, said the Sky Shroud War God. Otherwise, our true martial sacred ground could have gained another ancestor. As for your character, I cannot see through it. Those truly close to you are only Lin Ruhu and Zhang Gilin. My original choice for a war general was Lin Ruhu. Unfortunately, that boy is not one to remain in the primordial heartlands. Then let little Gue stay, said Su Zimo. Would he be willing? The Sky Shroud War God asked. Weren't those two determined to follow you? There are many beautiful things in this world beyond simply following me. Su Zimo smiled. His words carried meaning, though he did not explain further. After a few more exchanges with the old ancestors, Su Zimo left and returned to his South Goose Mountain. There, Lin Ruhu and little Gue had already been waiting for some time. You two came quickly, Su Zimo smiled. Both were dressed in long blue robes, accented with black and red. They looked spirited and full of energy. The two chuckled, and little Gue said, "These past few days, our true martial sacred ground has been very lively. Doesn't senior brother want to take a look? Everyone is waiting for you to appear." "What's so lively about it?" Su Zimo replied. "Ever since you bore the heaven's will, powerful forces have come every day to pay respects at our sect, nearly trampling the threshold down." Lin Ruhu laughed. "The elders have been busy receiving the great imperial lineages. Inside the sect, disciples' will to compete grows stronger by the day. There's no need for me to join in that liveliness." Su Zimo waved his hand. "What plans do you two have for the future?" "I want to follow you to the outer heavens," Lin Ruhu said directly. "Once there, I want to forge my own path." Little Gue hesitated, as if something weighed on his mind. "What is it?" Su Zimo smiled. "Is there something you can't say?" Little Gue hesitated for a moment. "His son was born just 3 days ago," Lin Ruhu interjected, unable to hold back. Su Zimo already knew little Gue and Yao Shengnan had been together for a long time. He suddenly thought of his parents' words about children. Perhaps it was little Gue's child that had reminded them. "This is a good thing," Su Zimo smiled. "What's there to be ashamed of?" Little Gue still looked hesitant. Seeing little Gue hesitant to speak, Su Zimo smiled and said, "This doesn't seem like your character. I want to stay in the primordial heartlands." Little Gue took a deep breath and replied, somewhat nervously, as he looked at Su Zimo. "Then stay," Su Zimo smiled. "You're not going to ask me why?" Little Gue asked. "Besides following me, there are actually many beautiful things in life," Su Zimo said with a smile. "Like your wife and now your newborn child, it's natural you can't bear to leave them. On the path of martial cultivation, not everyone yearns to climb to the peak. Some people are content with a peaceful life, walking at their own pace. That is enough. Yes, I, Zhang Gilin, lost my parents early. As a youth, I entered the true martial sacred ground. Originally, I thought following senior brother in roaming the world was my only joy, my lifelong dream," Little Gue replied. "But later I had a wife and then a child. Becoming a husband, then a father, having more attachments, I gradually didn't want to move forward anymore." "That's good." Su Zimo smiled and nodded. "You don't blame me?" Little Gue asked. "Blame you for what?" Su Zimo replied. "For not being able to follow you to the end, and breaking my promise from before," Little Gue said. "I had just told a few of the ancestors that I wanted you to stay, as a witness of my era." Su Zimo smiled and shook his head. "You and Ruhu are among my few true friends. Naturally, I respect your choices." Saying this, Su Zimo smiled again. "And your little one, if convenient, I'll go take a look at Violet Cloud Mountain." "I'll take you there," Little Gue quickly said. He then asked, "What about those sacred lords of the imperial lineages? They all want to visit you. Aren't you going to meet them?" "They're not important." Su Zimo waved his hand. Under Little Gue's lead, the three of them arrived at Violet Cloud Mountain. Little Gue was once just an ordinary inner disciple of the sect, but after following Su Zimo, his strength grew and his status rose accordingly. Now he had his own independent peak, a privilege many core true disciples longed for. Violet Cloud Mountain was located to the east of the true martial sacred ground. At sunrise, the first ray of sunlight would shine upon it, hence the name. The mountain itself was not particularly towering, a medium-sized peak with purple as its dominant color. Following the path up the mountain, after 10 minutes, the three arrived at a courtyard halfway up. The courtyard was especially quiet, with a flower garden planted nearby, making for a pleasant view. Yao Shengnan walked out from the inner room, holding the newborn child. Newborn babies loved to sleep. Su Zimo glanced at the child. Though he looked like any ordinary infant, his brows resembled Little Gue's by 70 or 80%. Looking at the baby, Little Gue's eyes were filled with deep paternal love. Su Zimo smiled faintly and slowly extended his hand. In his palm, several balls of light swirled. "Pick any one for your son. Consider it my gift," Suzimo said. "What is this?" little Gue asked. He looked at the differently colored light spheres. Each seemed vast, containing infinite power within. "The 100 battle physiques," Suzimo replied. "After the struggle for heaven's will, although he killed those people, their 100 battle physiques were preserved. Suzimo had collected them, though he himself had no use for them." "Then I won't hold back," little Gue chuckled. Pointing at the Primordius physique, he said, "That one, the Primordius physique." Suzimo pointed with his right hand, and immediately the Primordius physique turned into a stream of light, flying into the infant's body. He used an extremely gentle method to fuse it, so it would take some time. "Stay here with your child. No need to see me off," Suzimo said. "In a few days, come to my peak. I'll help you enhance your strength." "Thank you, senior brother," little Gue said gratefully. Suzimo waved his hand, then left Violet Cloud Mountain with Lin Ruhu. As they walked away, the outside sky gradually dimmed. Suzimo looked up. The horizon was painted with the last glow of dusk. The setting sun, like a great disk, slowly vanished into the void. Though ruthless to enemies, Suzimo had always been deeply loyal and generous to his brothers. After parting with Lin Ruhu, Suzimo returned to South Goose Mountain. Inside his room, he opened the book given to him by the Sky Shroud War God. Inside were Grand Emperor Zhenwu's insights into the Grand Emperor realm. When Grand Emperor Zhenwu ascended, he had just stepped into Yinyang, so the knowledge mostly pertained to the Yinyang stage. Later stages were mentioned little. After comprehending nomological truths, a Grand Emperor would condense the bridge of Yin and Yang within his body, formed from those nomological truths. The Yin-Yang bridge connected to the Grand Daos themselves. Suzimo made no external movement. Instead, countless nomological truths condensed in his body, flowing between his 9 meridians, then converging like myriad streams into one source, gathering in his abdomen. The Yin-Yang bridge sounded simple in words, but the process was extremely complex and difficult. The further one cultivated, the less one felt the passage of time. During this period, aside from helping Lin Ruhu and little Gue increase their strength, Suzimo spent all his time cultivating. But now, his cultivation was no longer as rapid as before. 2 months later, the God Emperor arrived at the true martial sacred ground. He came quietly, disturbing no one, and went directly to South Goose Mountain. "The ruins of divinity are about to open," the God Emperor said directly. "I see. Who will participate this time?" Suzimo asked. "The imperial lineages of the Middle Continent will definitely go. But with you and me here, deciding who gets in is just a matter of words," the God Emperor said. "Seeing how eager you are about the ruins of divinity, you must be after something," Suzimo asked. "There is something I want inside, and it might also be something you need," the God Emperor replied. "Now that both of us are condensing the Yin-Yang bridge, we really need it. Get ready, we'll go." "There's nothing to prepare," Suzimo waved his hand. The two left the true martial sacred ground, stepping into the air, flying toward the Middle Continent. The ruins of divinity were located at the border between the Holy Flower region and the Sky Soul region. Their speed was astonishing. Covering 1,000 miles in one step was no exaggeration. As they traveled, the vast mountains and rivers of the primordial heartlands stretched beneath them. Days passed, and finally, they arrived at the place where the ruins of divinity would open. It was a canyon. An endless canyon stretched across the 2 domains, like a coiling divine dragon lying across the boundless land. Atop the canyon cliffs, several figures sat quietly, each radiating astonishing might, with thunder and wind stirring around them. At this moment, when Suzimo and the God Emperor arrived, everyone stood up. They all bowed deeply toward the two of them. "We greet the Infernal Emperor and the God Emperor. Rise." Suzimo waved his hand. With a rough glance, he saw that from the 5 great continents of the primordial heartlands, nearly half of the ancestral patriarchs of the great forces had gathered here. It was clear the ruins of divinity had immense attraction for them. Those patriarchs who had been radiating might and stability, after Su Zimo and the God Emperor appeared, exchanged glances, looking somewhat nervous and uneasy. "Where is the ruin?" Su Zimo asked. Someone nearby immediately replied, "Infernal Emperor, 3 miles to the east, at the left side of the gorge. There the void itself is unstable. Every 10 years the cycle comes again, and this gorge will reverse yin and yang, finally opening a portal, allowing entry." Su Zimo followed his gaze and saw that in the thick forest, the void was indeed rippling violently. It was already affecting the surrounding space. It looked like devouring, endlessly expanding. "This ruin, is it a particle world?" Su Zimo asked. "More or less. The space inside is vast, but filled with peril," the man replied. "Even for us, we only dare to roam the outer edges. We would never enter too deeply." These words were an exaggeration, for these were the very peak figures of the secular world in the primordial heartlands. If even they didn't dare enter, then this ruin was likely on par with the 10 Forbidden Grounds, no surprise there. "How long until it opens?" Su Zimo asked. "Judging by the current speed of void expansion, probably tomorrow morning," someone answered. Su Zimo nodded slightly. His gaze swept across every face present, and immediately everyone felt an oppressive weight pressing on their hearts. They all understood clearly. This was Su Zimo's warning. The ruin's fate was his to decide. "Oh!" Su Zimo and the God Emperor found a flat boulder nearby and sat down to meditate. The God Emperor smiled and asked, "I suppose you are also condensing your Yin-Yang bridge now?" Su Zimo nodded, replying, "Why? You've already completed it?" Although the God Emperor's heavens will had been restored, all his past cultivation was gone. Just like Su Zimo, he was cultivating anew from the initial step of the Grand Emperor realm. "How could it be so fast?" The God Emperor looked up, then said, "But within these ruins of divinity, there is a God crystal born from the corpses of gods after their fall. It greatly aids in comprehending nomological truths." "You're here for the God crystal?" Su Zimo asked. "I wouldn't mind other treasures too, but the place is far from simple. I wouldn't dare rush in recklessly." The God Emperor chuckled. As the two continued discussing matters of the Grand Emperor realm, despite the God Emperor having ascended earlier, he had never been to the outer heavens, so in truth he knew little more than Su Zimo. Finally, after a night passed, at dawn the next morning, white light crept across the horizon. The void, which had been quivering all night, suddenly thundered with a rumble as a black portal opened in the gorge. Nothing could be seen inside the portal, only that deep blackness that drew every eye. "Honored ones, please." All those gathered turned to Su Zimo and the God Emperor, speaking with utmost respect. If the two did not enter first, none of them dared step in. When the two figures disappeared into the void portal, everyone let out a long sigh of relief. In the presence of two Grand Emperors, the oppression was far too great. Even their breathing had nearly stopped. For one who is Grand Emperor, truly unmatched under heaven. "Oh!" Before their eyes stretched desolation. An ancient cemetery extended as far as sight could reach. Simple blue bricks and green tiles formed endless walls of the graveyard, stretching like a skyline. The structures here had endured countless ages yet still stood unbroken. On both sides towered ancient trees, tall and silver-frosted. The climate here was strange, though outside it was already spring. Inside it still snowed heavily, flakes falling like goose feathers. White snow drifted through the void, carrying a sense of decline and finality. Looking ahead, there were tombs upon tombs. No tombstones, no markers, only simple mounds. There were hundreds in sight, and that was only a fraction. The area was vast, numbering beyond count. Were there truly so many gods in the legendary era? Su Zimo murmured. Not all were gods. Some tombs bury monsters, the God Emperor explained. He had been here once before, so he knew the way. The outer tombs have all been explored. Let us head deeper. What exactly happened here in the past? Su Zimo asked. Everywhere was ruin, desolation, sorrow. It was as if grief itself had saturated the entire cemetery. Standing here, one's emotions could not help but be pulled down. "Come with me," the God Emperor said, leading Su Zimo straight along a narrow path ahead. Those patriarchs who had entered with them quickly separated. Everyone knew if they followed these two, they wouldn't even get scraps. Their steps crunched over withered branches, over heavy snow, over piles of bones. It was impossible to distinguish what lay beneath their feet anymore. The two reached the end of the small path, where several forks spread out, and at the end stood an ancient stone stele. This was the only stone stele remaining in the entire graveyard. Catastrophe descends. Broken bodies protect the world. Gods fall. The stele's age was impossible to determine, but its countless cracks seemed to whisper of endless years gone by. Deeply carved into it were these words: "Catastrophe, Gods fall." Su Zimo murmured softly. He turned to glance at the God Emperor and asked, "You know something, don't you?" "Only guesses. I don't wish to say, lest I mislead your judgment," the God Emperor replied. "When we leave the ruins of divinity, we can discuss. After all, this was long ago and no longer matters." Su Zimo brushed his hands across the stone stele. He did not know who had erected it, nor who had carved the inscription. Yet even after endless ages, he could still feel the sorrow and emotion of the one who left those words. Passing the stele, the God Emperor led Su Zimo onto the leftward main path. Their figures finally stopped before an ancient tomb. This tomb had been carefully built. Unlike the crude mounds around it, it stood out in contrast. It rose 100 meters high, and the soil covering it was no ordinary earth, but star sand. Each grain of star sand was still visible, though after endless years, their brilliance had dimmed. The tomb also had no name, but judging from its scale, it was clear that its owner was extraordinary. Beneath the starlight sand was a massive door made of separation wood. Separation wood came from the acacia tree, but that species had gone extinct as far back as the primordial era. The only places where such wood could still be found were in these ancient ruins. Su Zimo walked up to the gate and saw that it was carved with a very old picture. It depicted a human figure, though it was already somewhat blurred. The figure held a long halberd, wore a robe of blue golden silk threads, had empty, lightless eyes, and long blue hair that fell loosely. Just as Su Zimo placed his hands on the door, a powerful force flung him back. At the same time, the entire tomb began to shake violently. The ground cracked open, the surrounding irregular tombs collapsed, and a howling wind swept through the cemetery. "You've triggered the tomb's restriction," the God Emperor said calmly. "Restriction?" Su Zimo asked. "Yes. Every tomb here has its own restriction, a kind of protection for the dead," the God Emperor explained. "To enter a tomb, the restriction must first be broken." Su Zimo looked around. From the mounds of earth atop the graves, pairs of hands pushed through the soil and crawled up from the ground. The large tomb seemed to be the ruler of this kilometer-wide area. Its restriction had been triggered, causing all the smaller tombs around it to react as well. From these smaller tombs, figures climbed out, their condition reflecting the level of cultivation they once had. Those with weaker cultivation had decayed into bare skeletons. Those who had been strong in life still retained their flesh, though their clothes were tattered. They were like puppets, walking corpses, charging at Su Zimo and the God Emperor. At a glance, there were dozens of them. "These are not gods, nothing to be wary of," the God Emperor said with a smile. "They're more like servants of the gods. When I came to the ruins of divinity before, I stopped at this very tomb. I suspected that its master was a true god, so I didn't enter out of caution." As he explained, the God Emperor's power surged. The grand Tao he comprehended was the God Tao. Golden divine energy flowed in his hand with a noble majesty. With a flick of his finger, it erupted in a burst of blinding light. It shot skyward, blocking out the falling snow above. Golden radiance covered the heavens. It was like an ocean splitting into countless rivers. The light rained down, shimmering like gold upon the waves, dazzling and magnificent. Below, The puppets charging toward them were swallowed by the golden light, their bodies disintegrating at a speed visible to the naked eye. One ray of divine light, nothing could withstand it. This was divinity. I suddenly thought of a question, Suzumo said with a smile. What? The God Emperor asked. What's your relationship with the primal god race? This kind of power, Suzumo had once felt something similar when competing for heaven's will, from the primal god race's holy son, Chu Tianyong. He had never before considered that the God Emperor might have any connection to the primal god race, since the Divine Gate was an independent force. A few tens of thousands of years ago, we were one family, the God Emperor replied with a smile. If you don't want to say, I won't press, Suzumo said. It's not that I don't want to say, I just don't want to mention that race anymore, the God Emperor replied. Ah, so more grudges. Suzumo waved his hand dismissively. He couldn't be bothered to listen further. It was just a casual question anyway. He placed his hands on the great door again, channeling his spirit force. With force, he pushed down, and at last, with a creaking sound, the ancient door slowly opened. The air inside was thick and foul, carrying a pungent stench, likely because the place had been sealed too long with no circulation. The lighting was extremely poor, dim and oppressive. Let's go, Suzumo said, stepping inside first. The interior space was actually quite vast. As soon as they entered, a heavy bang echoed behind them. The great door had shut on its own. The two exchanged a glance, then continued forward. It was a narrow passageway with no end in sight, unclear where it might lead. After walking for more than 10 minutes, their view finally opened up. They had arrived inside a great hall. Around the hall, many glowing pearls had been placed, still emitting a faint light even now. At the very center stood 9 blood-red coffins. Each one was suspended in midair, hanging from iron chains. Who dares trespass in my master's resting place? A hoarse voice came from within one of the coffins. Then came a soft murmur. 2 grand emperors in one era. Now that is rare indeed. Who are you? The God Emperor asked. The 2 of them had been seen through at a glance, yet the voice showed not the slightest fear, only mild surprise. You come into our tomb and yet don't know who we are? The voice from the coffin said. But it doesn't matter. This is no longer our era. Our names have long since faded with time. Leave now. We will not trouble you. We don't wish to fight with seniors either, the God Emperor said with a smile. We only came to seek a few things. The coffin voice paused, then asked, What things? God crystals. Impossible. The God Emperor's words were cut off immediately. The God crystals formed from the God's fall are incomparably precious. More importantly, taking them is a desecration. Whether it's desecration or disrespect, I don't give a crap, Suzumo said. We didn't come here for nothing. If that is so, then we shall fight. The voice from the coffin said flatly. With 9 loud bangs, the 9 coffins shook. Without hesitation, they opened. 9 figures stepped out. They were 9 old men, all dressed in the same red robes. Each was emaciated, skin clinging to bone, as if only a thin layer of flesh remained. The only difference between them was their height, some as short as children, others towering over 2 meters. In each of their eyes flickered sharp light. From beneath their wide red robes, a storm-like pressure surged forth, wild and overwhelming. These later generations are growing more and more arrogant, one of the old men said coldly. That's still better than relying on age to act superior, Suzumo said with a smile. Child, when we walked the world, you had not even been born yet. The old man replied flatly. We sought to retreat from the later ages, yet disturbances persist. Must we extract a price before peace is found? Then let's see if you truly have that ability, the God Emperor said calmly. A bunch of living corpses, that's all. You should have been keeping your heads down long ago, Suzumo said. He raised his right hand, and the scattered power drifting in the air gathered within his body. The might of a grand emperor spread forth, countless strands of nomological truths coiling around him. The overwhelming pressure was like a roaring tsunami, surging toward the 9 figures opposite him. The 9 on the other side were unwilling to back down. Blood light radiated around their bodies, streams of blood energy surging into the heavens, as if they wanted to break free from this tomb. It enveloped the entire sky, standing in direct opposition to Suzumo. Clad in crimson robes, they exuded tremendous force. The air boomed with their presence, and their garments fluttered. Their figures rose into the air, leaving streaks of blood across the void before vanishing. In the next instant, they appeared at the side of Suzumo and the God Emperor. Every move they made carried suffocating blood energy, tearing apart the void. "This is the nomological truth of blood," Suzumo remarked while fighting. "This reminds me of a certain race." The God Emperor nodded in response. The 7 warriors were extremely strong, and their cooperation showed signs of battlefield formation techniques. The blood-colored aura spread everywhere, yet Suzumo and the God Emperor paid it no mind. With the Emperor's might crashing down, they were practically suppressing the 7 as they fought. With a single palm strike, one of the opponents was flung away. His chest caved in as he crashed into several blood coffins inside the hall, shattering them. "Blood race." Both Suzumo and the God Emperor spoke at once. The God Emperor remembered clearly, when he had restored his fate, he had gone to the blood race to seize the myriad Tao Red Lotus. Now, the same power of the blood race could be felt from these men. The battle raged on, yet the hall itself remained unshaken. Despite the turbulence, it still stood tall, as if supported by some mysterious force. "You've disturbed my lord's rest. For that, you deserve death," one of the men roared. "You don't have that ability," Suzumo chuckled softly. The heaven-shattering power surged within him, and around Shadow Tyrant, the nomological truths of gold, wood, water, fire, and earth twined together, impossible to defend against. With a wave of his hand, the nomological truth of darkness fell. It swallowed the elder whole, drowning him in endless darkness. "How many nomological truths have you actually grasped?" Several elders shouted angrily. Their repeated attacks failed to gain ground, and their time was running out. In their current state, they could not hold out much longer. Moreover, Suzumo combined his nomological truths unpredictably. No one could guess what his next strike would be. Suzumo snapped his fingers. At once, the nomological truths of time and space rippled outward. Everyone's figures froze in place. No matter how hard they struggled, they could not immediately break free. He raised Shadow Tyrant, its blade gathering the nomological truth of destruction. The dark aura upon it burned like ghostly fire from hell, carrying a soul-devouring killing intent. The power surged forward, about to swallow the men whole. At that moment, a voice echoed from deep within the hall. "Enough! Let them through." The voice carried immense force, and as it fell, everyone's momentum was completely suppressed. It was like spring snow meeting the blazing summer sun, vanishing in an instant without a trace. Suzumo frowned at Shadow Tyrant in his hand. Just now, he had actually been suppressed. His gaze turned toward the depths of the hall. That was the inner sanctum. According to the old men, it was the dwelling of the so-called blood god. He exchanged a glance with the God Emperor, then kicked the elders aside and strode into the inner sanctum. Compared to the outer hall, this place was far more luxurious. It resembled a grand palace. With gilt structures, it was imposing and magnificent, yet dazzlingly ornate. At the far end stood a blood-colored throne. The space within was vast. The floor was paved with the hides of unknown beasts. At the very center, countless rare flowers and herbs bloomed. Suzumo swept his gaze over them. There was the primeval sunflower, jade coral, blood lotus seed, azure wood immortal vine. All manner of rare celestial plants and treasures were gathered together. At their center, floating in midair, was a massive purple coffin. The coffin was ancient and imposing, larger than all 9 of the outer blood coffins combined. Its surface was carved with incomprehensible patterns, intricate and ashen. Encircled by the blooming treasures, the purple coffin made the entire hall seem serene and tranquil. As Su Zimo and the God Emperor stepped inside, boundless blood energy flowed out from within the purple coffin. It filled the entire hall. Finally, the blood energy condensed midair into the form of a human silhouette. A blood-colored figure appeared. Though not a true living being, its sheer aura commanded respect. "Welcome, new rulers of this era," the blood figure said with a smile. "Your welcoming ceremony isn't very friendly," the God Emperor replied, referring to the earlier battle. "Think of it as a test. Without proving yourselves, how would you have the right to meet me?" The blood figure answered. "You're saying you're a god?" Su Zimo asked, eyeing the purple coffin. "By your definition, you could say that," the blood figure replied. "I know what you came for. You seek the God Crystal. I have it, but I won't give it so easily." "Then we'll just have to take it," the God Emperor said calmly. "Battles don't always solve problems," the blood figure said evenly. "The ruins of divinity are not a place for you to run wild. Even if you defeat me, without knowing where the God Crystal is stored, it would be meaningless." "State your terms," Su Zimo said, not wasting words. Since the figure was willing to meet them, it clearly had its own request. "Go and see someone for me," the blood figure replied. "Who?" the God Emperor asked. "An old friend of mine. Take my token to her," the blood figure said. As he spoke, a token floated out from the void beside him. No one knew what material it was made of, and the patterns on it were strange and indecipherable. "That's it? Just that simple?" the God Emperor asked in surprise. "Yes, that's simple. Hand her the token, then return and tell me her condition. That will count as the task completed," the blood figure said. "Where is this person?" Su Zimo asked. "To the north lies a vast icy tomb. That is where she rests," the blood figure replied. Su Zimo gave a slight nod. He and the God Emperor turned and left the blood god's tomb. As soon as they stepped outside, the God Emperor asked, "Do you really believe what he said?" "That doesn't matter," Su Zimo replied. "It's just a task along the way." They had many tombs yet to explore, and this was nothing more than one stop on their journey. As for whether the blood god's words were true or not, that would depend on what happened. If the other side had lied, Su Zimo wouldn't hesitate to throw his corpse into the wilderness, leaving it restless even in death. After leaving the tomb, the two continued walking forward. All around were only some small graves, not worth their attention. Finally, after about 10 minutes, the two stopped before a massive ice palace. On the way, Su Zimo had seen several corpses, the very people who had entered this place alongside him. Standing before the ice-sculpted palace, they could feel cold air seeping out from within. Given their physiques, the fact that they could feel the chill at all was proof enough that this place was anything but ordinary. The ice-sealed doors were tightly shut. With a single palm strike from the God Emperor, the entire gate shattered instantly, crumbling into countless shards of ice. From within, a cold wind howled like the cries of ghosts, surging through the tunnel. It forced their eyes half closed, and in the blink of an eye, the God Emperor was frozen into a statue. A cracking sound followed as he broke free from the ice. He laughed. "How careless of me. Let's go in and take a look," Su Zimo said. The two strode forward together, and the sight inside was beyond words. They had stepped into a world of ice. It was like an ice kingdom, a hidden world made entirely of frost. Iron trees and silver blossoms, towering ancient trees rising like a primeval forest. Brilliant flowers bloomed in competition. There were birds, white rabbits, green grass, and heavy snow. Even a waterfall that looked as if it fell from the ninth heaven had been frozen in midair. Everywhere their eyes fell, there was abundance, yet all of it was lifeless, formed entirely from ice. It gave a contradictory impression of both grandeur and desolation. The ice beneath their feet cracked constantly, while goosefeather snow fell endlessly from above. From the ground, white tigers formed from ice surged upward. Their roars shook the wilderness. their savage heads bellowing as countless of them lunged at the two men. These tigers were powerful, but still far from enough to threaten them. Su Zimo walked forward step by step, calm and unhurried. With a wave of his left hand, countless tigers were sent flying. Every move he made was perfectly attuned to the Tao, magnificent and overwhelming, like a rainbow piercing the sun, so forceful that the void itself shattered beneath it. The white tigers' cries of pain echoed without end, accompanied by the repeated bangs of their bodies, smashing into and fracturing the icy ground. The two advanced unimpeded. Nothing could stop them. At last, they reached the deepest part of the icy tomb. The earth trembled. Everything fell silent. Frost filled the very air. Directly ahead stood a colossal statue. It was the statue of a woman holding an ice staff, her long snow-white hair flowing behind her. A crown rested atop her head. Her wide white robe fluttered with the cold winds. The law of ice saturated the endless void around her. Outsiders. A vast voice descended. The massive statue before them began to move. Her right hand stretched outward, and with a single gesture, snow swept across 10,000 miles, freezing 1,000 more. The winds and snow in the tomb surged violently. They howled as if to devour heaven and earth, threatening to bury everything in the blizzard. A colossal hand struck downward, and the God Emperor countered with a punch. In an instant, his body froze solid and he was flung away. Even his divine nomological truths were completely sealed in ice. "You all right?" Su Zimo asked from the side. The God Emperor broke free of the frost, spitting out shards of ice. His hair hung in disarray, embarrassed after just a single exchange. "These so-called gods from the legendary era, what on earth are they? Wasn't it said that even grand emperors couldn't remain long in the primordial heartlands? Who knows what happened in such ancient times?" Su Zimo replied. He swung Shadow Tyrant, his blade tearing through wind, snow, and void. The terrifying strike fell from the heavens, cleaving directly onto the statue. With a loud boom, not even the slightest mark was left on it. Its defense was overwhelming. Another palm strike followed, and Su Zimo and the God Emperor quickly scattered to avoid it. "Outsiders, prepare to face the fury of the Ice God." The majestic voice echoed again and again through the snowy world. "We were sent by the Blood God," the God Emperor shouted. At his words, the giant hand in the storm seemed to hesitate. Even the blizzard itself briefly paused. The God Emperor quickly gestured for Su Zimo to take out the token. The token was thrown forward, immediately swallowed by the storm. After a moment of silence, the voice in the snow spoke again. "What did he send you here for?" "He wanted to know how you are now, and asked us to check on you," the God Emperor quickly answered. Su Zimo chuckled softly at the side. He hadn't expected the God Emperor to fold so quickly. He himself hadn't even started taking things seriously. "And since when has he ever been so kind?" the icy voice said coldly. "If not for him, how would we have fallen to such a state?" The God Emperor said nothing. He didn't know the tangled history behind their words. "Tell him this: we will not give up. Everything will rise again," the voice continued. "We'll deliver your words," the God Emperor replied. "Then get out," the voice roared, filled with anger. "Let's go," the God Emperor said to Su Zimo. He only wanted to leave. The strength of these gods had far exceeded his expectations. "Leaving with no dignity at all?" Su Zimo asked from the side. "What are you planning?" The God Emperor looked at him in surprise. "Do you even understand the word disgrace?" Su Zimo answered. With Shadow Tyrant in hand, his lone figure strode into the depths of the snowstorm. "This is not your era. Whether you are a god of the old days or a lingering false god, in my era, you will bow your head before me." The blade intent of Shadow Tyrant surged wildly. Countless nomological truths circled around him. "There's no need to fight them. We only came for the God Crystal," the God Emperor shouted from behind. "This has nothing to do with the God Crystal. I'm just not happy with their attitude," Su Zimo said calmly over his shoulder. So what if they ruled the legendary era? This is the Imperial Era, my era, the era of the Infernal Emperor. Why should they still hold power? With that single question, Su Zimo's blade intent exploded to its peak. He swung Shadow Tyrant, its faint glow erupting with endless ferocity, shredding all wind and snow in its path. He unleashed the 19 forms of Dao-seeking. Strike after strike, the blade intent surged ceaselessly, domineering and unmatched. All the frozen world before him became nothing but souls beneath his blade. Watching Su Zimo charge forward fearlessly, the God Emperor suddenly saw the gulf between them. I had no wish to kill you, but since you seek death, I will grant it. The voice in the storm grew furious. A mortal daring to challenge a god. To her, this was humiliation. Endless ice and snow swirled in sight, carried by a raging wind. That was the fury of the ice god. Countless ice spikes condensed into being. Thousands, tens of thousands, all lashing toward him. Seeing this, the God Emperor's expression hardened, and he immediately said, "Count me in as well." His god power surged as he stepped into the storm of ice and snow, charging at the massive ice statue. Su Zimo activated heaven-shattering God scripture, and behind him a towering giant stood tall. The oppressive might of Shadow Tyrant filled the void, leaving behind overlapping mountain-like phantoms. One slash became an endless storm. One slash became thousands of ice arrows. With this single strike, he cut through everything in existence. He stepped forward, the ice beneath his feet shattering with constant cracking sounds. To hell with your so-called divinity. Die for me. Shadow Tyrant in his hand tore apart the void, bursting with thunderous violence as it fell upon the statue. With a thunderous boom, an ear-splitting explosion shook the heavens, collapsing even the ice-built tomb. The ice layers split apart, and countless beings of this frozen world shattered with them. From within the broken statue, a streak of white light shot out. It was a woman. Her whole body was bare, her skin coated in a layer of frost. Her long hair was snow-white. Her features were so exquisitely beautiful they seemed unreal, breathtaking beyond belief. Even her lips were white, her eyes completely white, and her ears, like those of an elf, were pure white as well. When she opened her eyes, the entire world froze still. It was not time that stopped, but ice that froze all things. Endless cold poured from her body, surging without end. She gripped an ice staff and looked at Su Zimo and the God Emperor. She said, "Once every 100 years, the gate of the ruins of divinity opens at last. Let me begin with you too." She tapped the void lightly with her staff. In an instant, Su Zimo and the God Emperor were frozen where they stood. "This is not an esoteric art. It is a primal Tao," the God Emperor exclaimed in shock. And what was even more crucial, this primal Tao was of the path of Tao, not of the path of immortality. For grand emperors like them who had entered the path of Tao, it suppressed them directly. Otherwise, ordinary immortal primal Taos would truly have no effect. What kind of age was the legendary era? How could the primordial heartlands have such powerful existences? The God Emperor muttered to himself. It seemed many secrets of that age had been deliberately concealed. Why would the heavenly Tao allow such beings to exist? Su Zimo narrowed his eyes. Since becoming a grand emperor, this was the first time he had felt true danger. The woman pointed forward with her jade-like finger. That single gesture crossed endless void, carrying an unstoppable force as it shot toward the two men. Though just a finger, in the God Emperor's eyes it was no different from a rampaging beast. One strike would not kill them, but it would leave them grievously injured. Just as Su Zimo was about to summon chaos and the dragon gods, a powerful aura suddenly erupted skyward. The earth split apart, and a figure crossed the 9 heavens and 10 lands, stepping into the air to block the finger. With another thunderous boom, the void itself collapsed completely. Everything was annihilated, and the storm of snow abruptly ceased. The two looked ahead and saw the figure was a man clad in a blood-red robe. Thick blood flowed across his body. Blood energy surged skyward. A sea of blood spread out, suppressing even the wind and snow before him. "This is the blood god?" the god emperor asked in surprise. Though they had seen a blood shadow inside the tomb earlier, that had only been a phantom formed from blood. They had never seen the true body. "Who knows?" Suzimo replied. "You are still the same as before, unable to restrain yourself." The blood god looked at the ice god opposite him and smiled gently. "Why did you bring them here?" the ice god asked coldly, pointing at Suzimo and the god emperor. "Do you think I don't know of your schemes?" The blood god replied. "Ice god, listen to me. Stop this. This is no longer our era. We are nothing but relics of a bygone age. Stop? If it weren't for you back then, would we have ended up like this?" The ice god said indifferently. "If things had gone differently, perhaps now we would." Her tone faltered, filled with endless hatred, her teeth clenched. "In any case, this time no one can stop us. I will not stop you, but I will ask you this. Even if you leave these ruins, what can you do?" The blood god said, "We are the same. We cannot endure forever. Only here can we drag out what remains of our lives. Those you bargained with long ago, are any of them still alive? And the era has changed. Do you understand?" "I don't understand. I only know this: we will descend upon this era again and rule over everything." The ice god replied coldly. "You cannot stop us." She raised her ice staff high, endless ice and snow condensing at its tip. "You have gone mad," the blood god sighed, blinded by greed. At the tip of the staff, a flower petal suddenly formed. The petal exploded in the void like a signal. Immediately, the entirety of the ruins of divinity began to riot. The ice god's gaze fell, her voice echoing. "We had intended to wait until everything was ready before reappearing. But since you've discovered us, we must act ahead of schedule." As the ruins shook, the blood god turned back to Suzimo and the god emperor. "There are matters I must trouble you with." "What is it?" the god emperor asked. "Go to the war god's cemetery. Awaken him. End this once and for all," the blood god said. "All right," the god emperor agreed without hesitation. "What's in it for us?" Suzimo asked. "The god crystals I promised you can still be yours. At such a time, when the primordial heartlands faces life and death, how can you think like that?" the blood god asked. "If the world is destroyed, what has that to do with me?" Suzimo replied. "I can still go to the outer heavens. It doesn't touch my interests." "At least your own safety concerns you," the blood god said. "If the war god does not awaken, you will not leave here alive." "That is none of your concern," Suzimo replied. "I have my own way." The blood god stared at Suzimo, and after a long while, he finally sighed in defeat. "All our god crystals and treasures are stored within the war god's cemetery. Once you reach it, you will naturally obtain them." "Where is the war god's cemetery?" Suzimo asked. These ruins were vast, and though they had seen many tombs along the way, none bore inscriptions or names. "You cannot find it on your own. I will send you," the blood god said. With a wave of his right hand, a line of blood formed from his power, floating before the two men. "Follow this bloodline, and it will lead you to the war god's cemetery. You two must go quickly. I'll hold them back, but I don't know how long I can last." The blood god spoke. As soon as his words fell, his body dissolved, transforming into endless blood energy that shrouded the area. Blood clouds spread outward, forming a domain of blood here. "Let's go," the god emperor said. The two followed the bloodline ahead, quickly sprinting forward. "Tell me, do you think there's some grudge between these gods?" Suzimo asked curiously. "Who knows? It seems like some want to rule the primordial heartlands, while others are trying to stop them," the god emperor replied. At this moment, the ruins of divinity were in great upheaval. It seemed not only the ice god and the blood god were awakening, but other gods were also beginning to revive. In the northwest, an evil aura surged into the sky, a torrent of black floods rolling through the heavens. In the east, blazing flames burned fiercely, dyeing the whole sky red. Clouds of fire floated in the void. In the south, thunder raged, destroying the heavens and the earth. The sky darkened, and thunder dragons roared. One terrifying aura after another spread across this ancient land, more and more appearing. The void shifted ceaselessly, the heavens reflecting all. One god after another soared into the sky. The two followed the bloodline, flying as fast as they could. Along the way, they encountered many other creatures. All crawled out of tombs, some forming alliances, some fighting each other. It was utter chaos. Many monsters tried to block Suzumo and the God Emperor's path. But the imperial might radiating from them swept over everything. How could ordinary creatures stand in their way? Following the bloodline, they finally saw, faintly in the mist ahead, a vast palace. Yet before they could take a closer look, a giant hand stretched out from beneath the earth, slamming down upon them as if overturning the world. The sky above shattered into nothingness. The hand carried blazing flames, burning the 8 desolations, igniting the 9 heavens. The two rapidly retreated. The instant that giant hand landed, everything was annihilated. The earth cracked, and fierce flames rose up, turning the area before the tomb into a sea of fire. It was like an insurmountable chasm. Standing within the flames, they saw a figure slowly stepping out of the fire as the sea of flames parted a path. The man wore a blazing red robe of fire, a flame-shaped mark on his forehead. With each step he took, flames erupted beneath his feet. Powerful aura surrounded him. "This path is closed," he said calmly to the two, blocking their way. "Fire God?" the God Emperor asked. But the figure ignored him, simply standing there, unmoving. Suzumo drew Shadow Tyrant, ready to fight, but was stopped by the God Emperor. He looked at him in confusion. "He's mine to deal with. You go to the War God's tomb," the God Emperor said calmly. "He's just cultivated for a few more eras than us, nothing more." Truly infuriating. "Can you handle him?" Suzumo laughed. "Even if I can't, I must," the God Emperor growled coldly. Imperial might spread from him, nomological truth of divinity enveloping his body. The void around them subtly shifted. "Go!" the God Emperor shouted. Suzumo stepped forward into the air. The fire god moved to stop him, but the God Emperor shouted loudly,
"Du Gott!"
Above his head, the divine gate opened, light shining down from it. The light fell on the fire god, binding him completely in place. No matter how he struggled, he could not move an inch. 30 seconds, go! The God Emperor shouted. Suzumo did not look back, flying straight toward the distant tomb. The fire god roared, his long fiery red hair blazing like a flame. Suzumo had no time to pay attention to anything else. He raced toward the front of the tomb. This graveyard was ancient, surrounded by crumbling walls. Inside, weeds grew wild. Some were half as tall as a man. In the center stood a mound of earth. Unlike the grand, imposing tombs of the other gods, this one looked like an ordinary grave. When Suzumo arrived, the ground shook beneath him. A tunnel opened up on its own. "Come inside," an old voice echoed from within. "War God?" Suzumo asked cautiously. "Enter and you will know," the voice replied. Suzumo glanced back, seeing the God Emperor still entangled with the fire god, then rushed into the tunnel. Inside, it was brightly lit with hundreds of stone steps. On both walls, murals were carved. But Suzumo did not stop to look, instead hurrying down the stairs to the very end. There, only a single statue sat alone, facing away from the stairs. As Suzumo arrived, the statue slowly turned to face him. "I've waited for you a long time," the statue said. It was an old man, kindly in appearance, with a head of snow-white hair. The statue was lifelike, each wrinkle and line on his face clearly carved. He wore a long gray robe, spread wide across the ground. "Waited for me?" Suzumo asked in surprise. "The heaven's will of this era rests on you," the old man said. "Of course I was waiting." Senior, are you the war god? Suzimo asked. The blood god sent me here. I know what's happening outside, but I can do nothing, the old man replied. I used all my strength to construct these ruins of divinity. My true body has long since decayed. I cannot return to the world. I only came to pass a message, Suzimo said. The payment is god crystals. If you defeat the gods outside, not only will my god crystals be yours, but theirs as well, the old man smiled. And you will gain a power besides. Just say directly what you want, Suzimo replied. Though I cannot return, my power remains. I can give it to you, the war god said. The mission to save the ruins of divinity, I leave to you. As his words fell, light began to glow around the statue. The light gathered, forming a red orb floating in the air. The old man's voice grew weary. Do not shame the name of war god. I haven't said whether I'll accept or not, Suzimo replied. This is a matter of many gains in one stroke. Gain my strength, gain countless god crystals. It will greatly aid your future path, the old man said. There's actually something this good in the world, Suzimo replied. Like a pie falling from the sky. This is not given to you for free, the old man said. You must suppress the gods here in order to obtain my power. Consider it a kind of test. In the future, when you go to the outer heavens, don't disgrace the name of the war god. I want to know something, Suzimo said. The origin of the ruins of divinity, right? The old man seemed to have already guessed, and after a brief silence said, I am not willing to bring up that period of time. After all, it was the failure under my leadership. But if you insist on knowing, I ask that you do not spread it. I must know, Suzimo nodded. The legendary era was very different from your current age. Grand emperors were not the strongest beings. The gods had all transcended the Grand Emperor realm. Even attaining the Saint Sovereign realm was not a problem. The old man slowly spoke, as if recounting a story. His tone carried deep sighs. Unfortunately, the primordial heartlands were after all only a medium-sized world. The limitations of this world were finite. Could not be compared to a great world like the outer heavens. No matter how diligently we cultivated, there was always an unbridgeable gulf between us and the outer heavens. Later, the gods were unwilling to fall behind, so they contacted powerful beings of the outer heavens, wanting to break through the barrier between the primordial heartlands and the outer heavens, merging the two worlds together. That way they could enjoy power equal to that of the outer heavens. Though somewhat crazy, it seems like a decent idea, Suzimo replied. You think the heavenly Tao would permit this? The old man asked back. The heavenly Tao would erase anything that endangered the primordial heartlands. We gods were clearly among such threats. Once the heavenly tribulation descended, not only would we gods perish, but all living beings would be affected. At that time, with living beings plunged into calamity, the peaceful continent would instantly collapse and unravel. As the leader of the gods, I naturally could not allow such a thing to happen. The old man said, I sought out the heavenly Tao and made a bargain. If I resolved the problem of the gods, then the heavenly tribulation would not descend. So you went to war against those gods? Suzimo asked. Not just me, some gods also stood with me, including the blood god, the old man said. I merged myself into this place and formed the ruins of divinity. It was to be the conclusion of everything. But I didn't expect them to remain unrepentant, still attempting to restart the legendary era. But the age has changed, and now they can do nothing. Yet I do not want turmoil to arise again, so I need you to resolve it. Why me? Suzimo asked. I feel a familiar aura in you, my war god's 9 transformations, the old man said. And moreover, the fate of this age rests upon you. You are the most suited for this role. I don't like being a hero. I fight only for profit, Suzimo said. It makes no difference. Defeat them and everything here will belong to you, the old man said. The war god's power and so many god crystals will be enough for you to have the strength to protect yourself when you go to the outer heavens. Suzimo looked at the ball of light condensed on the statue before him. He stretched out his right hand and slowly placed it in his palm. The next moment, the light suddenly grew brilliant, transforming into a stream of dazzling radiance that rushed into his forehead. An endless power spread through his limbs and bones. He only felt a warm current rising throughout his body. Then countless cells seemed to be activated, surging madly, and his war god's 9 transformations unconsciously activated. Within the empty tomb, an incredibly powerful aura erupted forth. Oh! Outside, in the ruins of divinity, the outsiders had either fled or died, and chaos reigned. The gods were reviving. After the ice god released her power, one god after another awakened. The fire god, the evil god, the thunder god, the massacre god, the star god, each presided over a different path. Each god's emergence was like a natural disaster descending, turning the entire ruins upside down. At this moment, the blood god could no longer hold on. Blood god, why not join us? If you keep going like this, you're only waiting for death. The thunder god's voice boomed like rolling thunder, shaking the heavens. The blood aura around the blood god had grown thin, its power nearly shattered, making it look particularly battered. "Stop this, all of you," the blood god said with difficulty. "You've fallen to this point. Why persist in your delusions? This current state of ours was caused by that war god." The fire god roared in anger. "If not for him, we would have already merged with the outer heavens, now basking in the glory of a great world. You really think the beings of the outer heavens would coexist peacefully with you? Breaking the barrier is no different from inviting wolves into your home," the blood god replied. "If not for the war god's compassion, you would not even have this place in the ruins to shelter in. You'd have been buried with the old era long ago. Spare us the nonsense. Since ancient times it's been the victor who becomes king." The massacre god's eyes were filled with murderous intent. The Tao of slaughter pressed down, crushing the eternal void, imprinting its divine will upon everything. That war god probably doesn't even dare come out anymore. Now he can only put up a false show of strength. Since you don't know what's good for you, then die here along with this place. Another heavy strike sent the blood god flying. His grand Tao completely shattered. He no longer had any power to fight. The ancient gods stepped forward, one by one, walking past his body, heading toward the exit ahead. That was the exit out of the ruins of divinity, which opened only once every 100 years. The blood god struggled to block them, but had no strength left. It could only watch as the gods prepared to leave one by one. Just then, from the distant tomb, an astonishing aura erupted. A battle intent surged skyward, soaring into the heavens, seizing the entire void. The power was extremely domineering, and as it appeared, the powers of the other gods were all suppressed. That battle intent kept expanding, becoming more and more immense. That is, a god looked toward the source of the battle intent. It's the direction of the war god's tomb. How could that old man possibly still have the ability to come out? The star god said in astonishment. If he could, would he have tolerated us until now? No, something's off. This doesn't feel like the war god. The power is very similar, but if you carefully sense it, it's somewhat different. They knew the war god well. After all, they had fought against him for so many ages. No one knew his power better than they did. From the direction of the tomb, that battle intent began to move. It was slowly walking towards them. That power was approaching step by step, and all the gods who were preparing to leave stopped in their tracks. They stared in horror at that direction, motionless. Su Zimo, clad in the war god armor, stepped out of the tomb one step at a time. Outside the tomb, the god emperor lay gravely wounded, barely clinging to life in a pool of blood. "You?" The god emperor looked at Su Zimo, leaving only the image of a figure so imposing. Clearly not a tall figure, yet one so unreachable. "Leave the rest to me." Su Zimo patted his shoulder. He infused a strand of life force into the god emperor's body. Both he and the god emperor had only just entered the grand emperor realm. But that fire god had already reached at least the 4th stage of grand emperor, the life-death stage. The God Emperor was no match for him, as expected. In the turbulent ruins of divinity, mist and sand swirled across the skies. Countless nomological truths pressed through the void, as if proclaiming their existence. Faint footsteps echoed from the storm, and Su Zimo's figure gradually appeared. Everyone's expression turned solemn. "Who are you?" More than a dozen gods looked at him. The fire god asked. "The one who will bury you." Su Zimo gripped Shadow Tyrant, his tone calm. It seems that the old man truly had no one left to choose, to send such a young brat to die. The void god snorted. Just as his words fell, Su Zimo's figure vanished from sight. The next moment, before anyone could react, Shadow Tyrant had already pierced through his chest, pinning him against the side of a tomb. With a loud boom, the tomb collapsed and the earth split apart. "What were you just saying?" Su Zimo picked at his ear, asking impatiently. All the nearby gods exchanged glances, then nodded to one another. The fire god roared, unleashing a torrent of flames toward him. The sky filled with raging fire, within which countless creatures were born. Dragon roars, tiger cries, blazing flames. Even the air itself turned into trails of white smoke as it was incinerated. Beside him, the ice god was not to be outdone, raising her ice staff as the Tao of ice surged forth. Together with the fire god, one controlled half the sky each, dividing heaven and earth into fire and ice. And Su Zimo stood right at the very center of their clash. When the two mighty forces collided against him, his brow did not even furrow. He merely clenched his fists tightly and threw a punch. Both Daos shattered instantly. The fire god and the ice god staggered back, their faces grim. "He inherited the power of the war god," the star god said. "I remember something," the void god, climbing from the ruins, said. "It is said that when the war god bestows his power to another, it manifests according to the maximum strength that person's aptitude can endure. This brat may be no weaker than the war god of old. Then what do we do? Are all our years of planning to be ruined again?" The thunder god roared. The star god did not answer, but turned his gaze to Su Zimo. He shouted, "Honored one, how about we negotiate terms?" Su Zimo turned his head toward him, his profound gaze falling upon the star god. The star god instantly tensed, then said, "There is no need for you to risk your life for the war god. He cannot give you anything. Work with us, and together we can dominate the entire world. I alone can dominate a world. Why would I need useless trash like you?" Su Zimo asked calmly. He was the bearer of heaven's will, the strongest of this era. If not for entering the ruins of divinity, who in the outside world could have opposed him? Hearing such domineering words, the gods were momentarily stunned. Though what he said was not wrong, it was still too. "We can help you form an alliance with the beings of the outer heavens. Though you are strong now, you are not yet invincible," the star god said. "Don't you wish to take another step forward? To experience that so-called saint sovereign realm?" Indeed, after accepting the war god's power, Su Zimo had reached the very final stage of the Grand Emperor realm, the Sovereign Lord stage. He was only one step away from becoming a saint sovereign. But that single step was enough to block many for a lifetime. That single step was also insurmountable. Saint Sovereign, just two characters, yet so alluring and maddening. There were those who would give everything for it, without hesitation. "You think painting empty dreams is amusing?" Su Zimo said. "How will you know if you don't try, honored one?" The void god quickly said. "I will never test myself with failures like you." Su Zimo raised his hand, the war god's armor erupting with immense power. The divine powers of the war god suppressed all surrounding divine powers. The overwhelming battle will surged outward, slaughtering toward the group. "Since you insist on being obstinate, then fight to the death." The void god stretched out his hand, seizing the entire void in his grasp. The boundless void roared silently, attempting to imprison Su Zimo within it. But it was useless. Su Zimo stomped a foot into the void, shattering it all around him. His figure moved so fast that even afterimages could not be seen. In the next instant, he was already beside the void god, his fist surging with endless winds and clouds, smashing toward the god's head. With a loud boom, the head exploded like a sack of blood. But the void god quickly retreated, a new head instantly regrowing. "Ancient Starfall!" the star god shouted. His divine power of stars surged, and meteors descended from the heavens. They tore through the atmosphere, carrying unstoppable force. Suzumo chuckled softly. He stretched out his right hand, as if holding up the heavens themselves. All the meteors rested in his palm. With a wave of his hand, countless meteors, dense like a storm, rained down upon the gods. The divine power of the stars was instantly destroyed. Suzumo's power surged even further. With each punch, another divine path was shattered. The gods' pained roars echoed unceasingly. "Scatter! Escape separately!" the ice god shouted. "He will one day leave for the outer heavens. As long as we live, we can endure." The gods all nodded, clearly agreeing. Suzumo's dominance had cowed them. They were unwilling to fight to the death, for even then, victory was not certain. Seeing them trying to escape, Suzumo sneered, "Do you really think you can flee?" He waved his hand, and the entire ruins of divinity quaked violently. The ruins themselves had been created by the war god. Now that he wielded the war god's power, he naturally controlled this place. The ruins shook with unrest, the very heavens seeming to collapse. The gate to the outside world slammed shut. He slowly extended both hands, gathering a vast power between his palms. As his palms closed together, a grand sphere of majestic energy condensed. In Suzumo's hands, the orb filled with explosive power continued to condense. The surrounding void began to change. He pressed his palms together, and the orb was annihilated in his hands. An invisible might burst forth from him as the center. The aftershocks of the orb's destruction spread in all directions. Those gods who had been preparing to escape only felt a mighty force cover them. Within this power, they were as though trapped in a quagmire, unable to move freely, unable to break free. "Void God, can this void restriction be broken?" Fire God asked. "This is not a void restriction. Inside the ruins of divinity, he is the only true God," Void God quickly replied. "This restriction is the world's own restriction over the ruins. That old man still left a trick behind. He said he was giving us a place to rest within the ruins of divinity. In truth, he only wanted to imprison us for eternity." Fire God roared. The flames around his body burned violently in his rage, incinerating an entire patch of void above his head. But it was all useless. The ruins of divinity was a particle world of its own. This suppression of a particle world's power, if they had been in the outside world, they could have resisted somewhat. But inside here, there was no way to fight back. "I, unlike the war god, am not so merciful. The war god could not bear to kill you because he still cherished old ties." Suzumo stepped forward, his gaze sweeping across every face. Calmly, he said, "But I have no sentiment for the legendary era. I have only one phrase. Those who follow me prosper, those who oppose me die. You may choose for yourselves." "Boy, what are you, to dare command us?" Thunder God roared in fury. "We gods, even in death, will not submit to you." Hearing Thunder God's words, Suzumo chuckled. "Then I will grant your wish." His great hand descended. The skies and winds changed violently. The endless heavens were shrouded. He grabbed Thunder God's neck and tore his body apart into pieces. Seeing his Thunder Dao gathering lightning to regenerate, Suzumo slapped his hand down, crushing the Dao of Thunder into extinction. His great hand clenched hard, and a rumble like the heaven's wrath resounded. A black hole that devoured all appeared in the void. The Thunder Dao that had just begun to reform had no chance to react before being torn apart by the black hole. "No!" Thunder God's terrified cry echoed everywhere. His entire Dao turned to dust with the closing of the black hole. Without his Dao, his remaining God soul tried to flee into the void. But this world was completely under Su Zimo's control. How could he escape? Su Zimo grasped with his hand, dragging the struggling god soul toward him. With just a squeeze, boom! It exploded completely. Who else wishes to try? Su Zimo asked. The surroundings fell silent. No one wanted to die, though they spoke proudly. When true life and death stood before them, these gods who had lived through countless eras fell into silence. Honored one, how do you intend to deal with us? Star God asked with a forced smile. Destroy your own das, and I will allow you to live out your days in peace within this ruin, Su Zimo replied. Star God had wanted to say impossible, but looking into Su Zimo's eyes, he swallowed the words. Silence spread among the gods. I don't have time to wait for your decision. Su Zimo felt the war god's power within himself. Its duration was limited, and the strength in him would soon dissipate. By then, matters would no longer be so simple. Since you refuse to speak, I will decide for you. Su Zimo swept his hand. Once again, boundless might fell across the void with a rumble. The gods' figures were all enveloped beneath him. Under the immense pull, every one of their daos was stripped away. Some tried to resist, but he simply slapped them down into heavy injuries. Before his power, the gods were like frightened cicadas in winter. Like fish on the chopping block, they could only await his will. Their daos were torn away. Though the gods did not die, they were reduced to mortals. Perhaps their god souls were still strong and could train again. But to return to their former heights was nearly impossible. Once stripped from them, their daos were not destroyed. Instead, Su Zimo fused them into his own body. Each Dao carried its own insight. For now, he did not rush to comprehend them. The gods lay weakly on the ground, unable to recover without long healing. Do you wish to live? Su Zimo asked. What more do you want? Fire God retorted. Our daos have already been stripped. Do you still intend to humiliate us further? Hand over all of your god crystals, and I will leave, Su Zimo said. The gods exchanged glances. Void God waved his hand tiredly and said, Give them to him. None wish to provoke this demon any further. They only wish to send him away quickly. With a gesture, each god drew glowing bundles from their tombs. Inside were countless god crystals. Su Zimo gave a quick look and estimated there were thousands in total. They had been storing them since the legendary era, quite the wealth. He accepted the god crystals and ignored them further. Instead, he approached Blood God. The war god? Blood God looked to Su Zimo with hope. He cannot come, Su Zimo replied. I understand. Blood God bowed deeply. Thank you for this matter. It was only for benefit. Su Zimo waved his hand. He said, I should leave now. Farewell. Blood God nodded. When he found God Emperor again, the Grand Emperor's injuries were nearly healed. He was essentially unharmed. As a Grand Emperor, so long as his heaven's will was not damaged, there would be no lasting problems. Su Zimo casually gave him dozens of god crystals. You've dealt with it all? God Emperor asked. At this time, the war god's power had completely receded. Though it would not be consumed entirely, its use was time-limited. It would take a long time before he could wield it again. Su Zimo nodded slightly. He cast one last deep look at the ruins of divinity, then left with the God Emperor. The curtain had fallen on the legacy of the legendary era. Exiting the ruins, Su Zimo turned to the God Emperor. Everything has been settled. After a century of seclusion, we will set out for the outer heavens. The two parted ways on the middle continent, one returning to the true martial sacred ground, the other to the Elden lands. The spring breeze gently swept across the horizon. In the blink of an eye, Su Zimo tore through the void before him, appearing at the gates of the true martial sacred ground. This time, he had returned for seclusion, to digest the gains of this journey. Today, the true martial sacred ground was especially lively. It was the day the sect opened its gates to recruit new disciples. One could say the mountain below was a sea of people, noisy voices blending together in chaos. Because Su Zimo bore the heaven's will, The true martial sacred ground had become the most renowned force of this era. Countless people were fighting desperately for a chance to get in. The line stretched from the mountain gate all the way down, like a long dragon. Did you hear? The true martial sacred ground's recruitment standards are really high, the highest among all sections. A youth discussed. Of course, the true martial sacred ground is the #1 force on the continent. If their standards weren't high, how would they deserve their reputation? I think you all are just wasting your time. You'll definitely be eliminated. Who gets eliminated isn't certain yet. Don't look down on others. Exactly, in Heaven Sun City, I'm also someone with quite a name. The youths chatted noisily, full of vigor and spirit, just like the spring season, with its gentle breeze and mild sunshine. Su Zimo walked along the steps leading up to the Sex Mountain Gate. He enjoyed this feeling. In the midst of mortal clamor, he could truly feel himself as part of the world, not some lofty grand emperor above it all. To comprehend the Tao, one must first enter the Tao, only then can one transcend. If you do not step into the Tao, how can you speak of transcending the Tao? Halfway up the mountain path, Su Zimo saw a commotion ahead. A crowd had gathered, pointing and whispering. He looked up and saw that disciples of the true martial sacred ground had also noticed, a group running down from the mountain gate. Get lost, you think you're worthy to join the true martial sacred ground? A frog in a well dreaming of the heavens. Yeah, you're just like your half-dead old man. Better off dying early. In the crowd, fists and feet struck at someone. At the center, there was a young boy, shielding a little girl in his arms. No matter how many punches and kicks landed on him, he gritted his teeth and endured silently. Someone nearby, confused, asked, "What's going on? Did he offend you? We're all from Fong Village. This brat is a half-beast, understand?" His father bore him and his sister with a demonic beast. Half-beast. People all looked at the boy with curiosity. Behind him, a tail swayed, and his eyes were pure white, without a trace of black. Some in the crowd laughed, some mocked, others simply stood by. The sect disciples responsible for maintaining order came down, frowning. "What's all this commotion?" one asked. "Senior brother." "Nothing, we were just playing," someone replied with a laugh. "Disperse. Whoever causes trouble again will lose their qualification for the trial." At these words, all the youths grew silent with fear. They scattered immediately. The sect disciples glanced at the boy at the center, shook their heads slightly, and eventually left. The boy struggled to his feet, looking at the little girl in his arms. "Brother, I'm scared," the girl said in a soft voice. "It's all right. I will definitely become a disciple of the true martial sacred ground. Work hard and protect you," the boy said seriously, clenching his fists. "I believe in you, brother." The girl smiled innocently, hugging his arm. "Effort isn't just words," Su Zimo said with a smile from the side. The boy looked up at him, silent for a while, then finally said, "I'll prove it." Su Zimo smiled faintly, casually tossing him a cultivation manual before turning and leaving. "Who are you?" The boy looked at the manual in his hands and shouted. "You don't need to know." Su Zimo pointed at his chest. "What matters most if you want to become strong is your Tao heart." The boy said nothing more, only stared as Su Zimo's figure disappeared from sight. Back at the true martial sacred ground, this was just a small episode. He only helped because the boy seemed pleasing to him. The boy's Tao heart was not bad. Su Zimo did not visit anyone else but began his long secluded cultivation. He refused all visitors. The first step of the Grand Emperor realm was to forge the Inyang Bridge. His god soul returned to the god world. His figure sat cross-legged in the void, the primordial chaos bead spinning above his head. A beam of light descended from the primordial chaos bead. It enveloped Su Zimo. He felt his mind calmer than ever before, as if every movement around him, even the flow of air, was crystal clear. His mind expanded several-fold in an instant. He placed god crystals around him, piled up, and slowly absorbed them. Thus began his first step in enlightenment. The Yin-Yang Bridge. The Grand Tao is silent, without confidence. Cultivate for a year, and 100 years pass in the body. During this century, the God crystals around him gradually dwindled. Seas shifted into mulberry fields, sun and moon turned in cycles. Whether the primordial heartlands or the God world, both underwent tremendous changes. The fervor for grand emperors began to fade. After the fall of countless prodigies in Skytrap Island, new talents began to rise and seize opportunities, one after another. In these 100 years, sects rose and fell without pause. Rumors spread constantly across the land. Somewhere, a prodigy accomplished a world-shaking deed, becoming famous across the continent. The fallen ones of the past were eventually forgotten. In a corner of the God world, in a void long forgotten for a century, Su Zimo slowly opened his eyes. The energies of Yin and Yang surged within him, releasing boundless might. Within his body, a vast bridge took shape in shadow. As endless Yin and Yang energy poured into it, the bridge grew more solid, more majestic. Su Zimo's aura also grew stronger. A rumbling thunder echoed unceasingly. His blood energy became more vigorous. He suddenly opened his eyes, and the world within them seemed split into two extremes. His gaze pierced layers of void, and he muttered to himself, 100 years. Finally, I've entered the Yin-Yang stage. And this was with the help of the primordial chaos bead and countless God crystals. Otherwise, even with 1,000 years, comprehension would not be certain. Such was the immense difficulty of reaching the higher realms. His figure crossed through the God world and returned to the primordial heartlands. Walking out from his chamber on South Goose Mountain, he felt as if lifetimes had passed. As though he no longer belonged to this world. The unfamiliar sunlight shone upon him, and Su Zimo took a long time to adjust before exhaling deeply. He looked up. Others could not see, but in the skies above, he faintly sensed a pressure from the heavenly Tao. He knew the time for departure was drawing near. In the blink of an eye, 100 years had passed. As he stepped out of South Goose Mountain, he found the true martial sacred ground filled with many unfamiliar faces, people who did not even know him. Everything had changed with time, a wave of strangeness rushing over him. Walking toward Green Mountain, he unexpectedly encountered Little Gue. The current Zhang Gilin had already become the first Grand Elder of the true martial sacred ground. He wore a deep blue long robe draped over his body. His hair had grown long, cascading down his back, tied with an azure ribbon. His expression looked much more resolute, carrying the bearing of one who held authority. When he saw Su Zimo appear, Zhang Gilin said in surprise, "Senior brother, you've emerged from seclusion." Su Zimo smiled and nodded. "That's right, counting the time, it's been nearly 100 years. Zhang Gilin nodded as well. He asked, "Has senior brother gained anything?" "Somewhat," Su Zimo smiled. "You look in such a hurry. Where are you going? Isn't it the time for the core disciples' annual competition?" "I was ordered to preside over it," Zhang Gilin replied. "Why not come with me, senior brother? You can see how our younger generation of the true martial sacred ground is thriving. Sometimes I even feel like I've grown old." "And Ruhu?" Su Zimo asked. "He's like you. These 100 years, if not training, then secluded cultivation." "I haven't seen him for a long time either," Zhang Gilin answered. "Then let's go take a look," Su Zimo said with a smile. "After closing myself off for 100 years, I've become somewhat like dead wood. I should go somewhere lively to readjust. Humans, after all, are social creatures. Forget 100 years, even if you were confined in a closed space for just a few days, you'd probably break down." On their way to the core disciples competition, many disciples greeted Zhang Gilin when they saw him. But very few still remembered Su Zimo. The disciples now were all of the newer generation. When they joined the true martial sacred ground, Su Zimo had already been in seclusion. So it was natural that they didn't recognize him. "Have any interesting things happened these past few years?" Su Zimo asked. "What could happen?" It's still just talk of where some prodigy appeared, or where some secret realm opened, Zhang Gilin replied. This world never changes. I've grown tired of it. Then he added, but within our sect, there have been a few promising seedlings. They've made me feel the urge to personally cultivate them. The two arrived at the competition grounds. The area was already packed with countless inner disciples. There were also innumerable disciples, from both the inner and outer court, gathered around to spectate. This competition was considered a grand event within the true martial sacred ground. Grand Elder Zhang is here. Everyone quiet down. Huh? Who's that person next to Grand Elder Zhang? Looks unfamiliar. If he's with Grand Elder Zhang, his identity surely isn't simple. The competition stage was divided into 8 platforms. Su Zimo sat down on one of the seats at the front. Before he could even settle in, a disciple beside him suddenly said, "This senior brother, this is Grand Elder Zhang's seat. Please move aside." Su Zimo looked at the disciple, then turned his gaze toward Zhang Gilin. "Who are you?" Zhang Gilin asked with a frown. The disciple quickly replied, "Grand Elder Zhang, I'm inner court disciple Yan Xing. Do you know who he is?" Zhang Gilin pointed at Su Zimo and asked, I don't." The disciple hurriedly shook his head. He was only trying to act clever, wanting to make a good impression in front of Zhang Gilin. There are some people you can never afford to offend. Get lost. Zhang Gilin waved his hand with some annoyance. "Ah, yes, yes." The disciple froze for a moment, then ran off in panic. "No need to get angry over such a small matter," Su Zimo smiled. "If it weren't for the fact he's a disciple, I would have cut his head off on the spot," Zhang Gilin said coldly. He then sat beside Su Zimo. After his opening remarks, the core disciples below had already begun their matches. "See that young man?" Zhang Gilin pointed at one of the stages. He said, "Among all the disciples recruited in recent years, he's grown the fastest. Also the most diligent and hardworking. I even have the intention of training him as a successor." Hearing this, Su Zimo looked up and found it quite a coincidence. He actually recognized that youth. It was the half-beast boy he had encountered before when returning to the sect at the mountain gates. He remembered that he had even given the boy a cultivation manual back then. What was only a casual act at the time turned out to become such a strange karmic coincidence. "Senior brother knows him?" Zhang Gilin asked curiously. "I've met him once. I recall he also had a younger sister," Su Zimo replied. "Don't bring her up. That girl is now nothing but a beauty that brings calamity. Many of our sect's disciples waste their days chasing after her instead of cultivating. I can't even stop them," Zhang Gilin said. "Greed and lust are part of human nature. If one had no desires, what meaning would life have?" Su Zimo smiled. "As long as they don't break the rules, everything is fine." On stage, the fights were heated, but Su Zimo barely paid attention. The strength and outcome of each battle were obvious to him at a glance. Such fights were only worth watching for the atmosphere. Otherwise, they held little meaning. As expected, the half-beast youth lived up to Zhang Gilin's expectations and won first place in the competition. "What's his name?" Su Zimo asked. "Zhang Xiaopu," Zhang Gilin replied. "Rare to see senior brother interested. Pass along my words to him. He has already proven himself," Su Zimo said, waving his hand. Zhang Gilin went up to announce the rewards for the first-place winner, naturally also giving words of encouragement. Su Zimo, however, intended to bid farewell to his parents, so he left. On stage, Zhang Xiaopu stood brimming with energy, eyes shining as he looked around. At this moment, he was the brightest disciple of the true martial sacred ground. Then suddenly, in his field of vision, he caught a familiar silhouette. That figure was gone in a flash, disappearing into the crowd. Zhang Xiaopu's heart trembled, recalling the scene at the mountain gates. That manual that had almost changed his fate. He wanted to chase after him but was stopped by Zhang Gilin. "Now is the award ceremony. As the first place, if you're absent, it won't look right," Zhang Gilin said with a smile. "That person just now, who was he?" Zhang Xiaopu asked quickly. You'll know in the future, Zhang Gilin replied. He asked me to tell you that you've proven yourself. Zhang Xiaopu fell silent, then bowed deeply toward the direction where the figure had vanished. 100 years had passed. The flowers, grass, and trees on Green Mountain were still as lush as ever, unchanged. The only difference was that along the path up the mountain, many purple poplar trees had been planted. Similar to poplars, but their trunks and even their leaves were all purple. The red and purple spread across the mountain in a breathtakingly beautiful sight. When Su Zimo saw his parents again, he could clearly feel that they had aged. Su Qingshan's temples were already turning white. When Renyun was in the wooden house, cooking. In truth, with their cultivation, they had long since transcended the need for food. You've come out of seclusion? Su Qingshan asked with a smile. Yes, Su Zimo nodded. I've stepped down from the position of Vice Lord, Su Qingshan said. From now on I can be more relaxed, spend more time with your mother. When are you planning to leave? Tomorrow. Su Zimo was silent for a moment before speaking. It is time to leave. Whether sooner or later you must eventually go. Su Qingshan smiled. He walked forward, patted Su Zimo's shoulder. Be a man. At that moment, Wan Renyun walked out from the house. In her arms she carried a bundle. She came to Su Zimo, straightened his clothes, smoothed his hair back from his forehead. Then she smiled and said, These are clothes your mother made for you. Take them with you. Su Zimo received the large bundle of clothes and nodded heavily. Go. Wan Renyun's voice trembled with sobs. She forced back her emotions and said, Mother won't ask you to give her a grandchild anymore. Just promise me. Take care of yourself. Live on. All right? Thank you, Mom. I will. Su Zimo laughed. Wan Renyun smiled faintly, then took out a jade bracelet from her bosom. She placed the jade bracelet in Su Zimo's palm, smiled and said, This was originally prepared for your future wife. You keep it. If one day you meet someone suitable, give this to her. Let it be a gift from your mother. Su Zimo was silent, a little sorrowful. Since his rebirth, his journey had always been smooth. It seemed everything was within his grasp. He had never encountered setbacks or grief, but at this moment of farewell, he could not help but feel sadness. Prepare yourself well, go, Wan Renyun said. Leaving Green Mountain, Su Zimo stored away the bundle. He let the true martial sacred ground spread the message. Tomorrow he would ascend to the outer heavens, and at that time the gate from the primordial heartlands to the outer heavens would be opened. If anyone wished to go together to the outer heavens, they should gather quickly at the true martial sacred ground. The heavenly gate would remain open for one day. After one day it would close. If one wanted to go again, they would have to wait until the next era's Grand Emperor bore the heaven's will. This news quickly spread throughout the entire primordial heartlands. In fact, not many wished to go to the outer heavens. Some people were too weak, afraid that before even reaching the outer heavens, they would be torn apart by the world's barrier. Others held high prestige on the primordial heartlands, with transcendent status, but in the outer heavens they might be worth nothing. As the saying goes, better to be the head of a chicken than the tail of a phoenix. That was the reasoning. There were also some who wanted to go, but could not abandon their attachments on primordial heartlands. Love and family ties were among such attachments. So very few would actually go to the outer heavens, except for those chasing the dream of becoming stronger. By dusk, Lin Ruhu and the God Emperor arrived at the true martial sacred ground. They called for Zhang Gilin, and the four of them drank together under the moon at South Goose Mountain, reminiscing about the past. How could young Master Su drink here without inviting me? A woman's voice came from outside the courtyard. They saw Lady Jing, dressed in red robes, like a blooming rose. Her red robes spread across the ground like petals in full bloom. She carried a rich rose fragrance as she walked in from outside. Why have you come, Miss Jing? Su Zimo smiled. What? You don't welcome me? Lady Jing smiled back. I too am going to the outer heavens. Of course I must find young Master Su. I see. A guest is a guest, Come sit. Suzimo waved his hand. Among all the people he had met, only this Lady Jing remained inscrutable. The last breath of spring wind drifted across the sky. The night air was just right. The moon hung in the sky, and everyone spoke of the outer heavens. They all say Lady Jing knows everything, but how much do you know about the outer heavens? The God Emperor asked. The outer heavens are divided into 9 layers called heavens. When we break the heavenly gate from primordial heartlands, we usually enter the mortal ascension heaven. Lady Jing raised her cup. Her red lips gently sipped a taste. Then she said, These 9 heavens are like 9 skies layered on top of one another, with the mortal ascension heaven at the very bottom. And below the mortal ascension heaven lies our primordial heartlands. Why does Lady Jing go to the outer heavens? The God Emperor asked again. I am originally from the outer heavens, so naturally I am returning home. Lady Jing smiled. She spoke with ease, without the slightest concealment. But the God Emperor froze, staring at her as if to see through her. But it was useless. Everyone knew how difficult it was to come from the outer heavens to primordial heartlands. But to Lady Jing it seemed nothing at all, as if it were simply everyday talk. Since she did not wish to explain, the others did not ask further. That night passed without words. They drank and relaxed until the morning. Some who wished to go to the outer heavens also began to gather at the true martial sacred ground. The light of dawn bloomed before the break of day. Suzimo set down his wine cup, stood up and smiled. Everyone, it is time to depart. He was the first to head up to the summit of South Goose Mountain. The others followed close behind. Standing on the summit, the cold wind whistled. Clothes fluttered, as if a call from the heavens echoed faintly. His gaze swept over primordial heartlands. This would be his last time seeing this world. Then imperial might surged around him. That vast might rushed into the sky, stirring up the heavens with storm and rain. The entire primordial heartlands, no matter where one was, could feel that power. What is happening? Inside the true martial sacred ground, the feeling was especially strong. Some disciples asked curiously, Don't you know? Our sect's Grand Emperor is opening the heavenly gate. Then let's go watch. To see such a sight once in a lifetime is already enough. Yes, yes. At the foot of the mountain, Zhang Xiaopu raised his head, looking at the towering figure at the summit. His gaze was firm, as if he had understood something. The heavens shifted with wind and clouds, dazzling light like a rainbow, the sun and moon revolving, shining on Suzimo. Suzimo stepped into the air, holding Shadow Tyrant, walking step by step toward the heavens. With a wave of his right hand, the heavens will he carried coiled around him like a dragon. In response to the heaven's will, the heavenly Tao faintly stirred. Vaguely, a giant gate's shadow appeared deep in the void. Open! Suzimo shouted loudly. His voice surged like the vast, boundless cosmos. The heavens will, with irresistible force, charged toward the heavenly gate above. In this moment, every creature on the 5 continents focused their gaze on that portal, because they knew within it lay another, far greater world. One that an era could only glimpse once. With a booming sound, the power of heavens will exploded in the sky. The heavenly gate in the skies was slowly being pushed open.